Jeff, it's Jeff.
Jeff, would you please call the roll?
Absolutely.
Thanks, sir.
Counselor Exner.
Here.
Okay.
I'm
Counselor
here.
Pietzel.
I really am.
Here. Counselor Hamblin.
Here.
Counselor Smallwood.
Yes.
Counselor Lee.
Here.
Counselor Schultz.
Here.
Mayor Coy.
Here. All right, so a couple things before we get started tonight. First is obviously our wastewater treatment stuff hit. And so we're getting a lot of community feedback. I just wanted to start with thanking staff. Staff has been taking a tremendous amount of phone calls and stuff from the community with asking, good questions and wanting to know what's going on. But that's been something that's been a pretty busy experience, and I'm sure not every conversation is pleasant. Some are more pleasant than others. So I just wanted to start with that recognition that we make a lot of decisions for the city, and a lot of times, there's the results or consequences, or at least feedback that happens from those decisions that our staff then, has to pick up and do and talk to the community on our behalf. So if you have an opportunity, especially some of those folks on the front lines that are taking those calls, maybe drop them an email, pick up the phone or call them, or if you're in City Hall, just let them know word of encouragement and thank them for all the work that they're doing. So.
Tyler had a great response.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Made a lot of sense and
Mhm.
brought things in perspective. I saw a couple of the things on
Mhm.
Facebook. I don't get on Facebook hardly anymore, but that one blew up.
I helped my
And
husband calm down when I told him you're.
My water bill. I did have one question to ask the staff on that, is like every other month my bill is exactly the same, and I wondered if they didn't go and check water every other month. And you have that graph, it's like every other, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. I mean, one thing,
You're just that efficient.
yeah.
Maybe, I know.
On those, one thing that when Tyler and I were talking earlier is, and I started referring some people back to, is to compare January 2019 to January 2020, because it gives you a more similar snapshot of what your lifestyle is during that time period. Think about it, you're there for the holidays, your kids are home, you're home.
We had 23 people staying at my house, right?
Yeah, so, yeah.
For a few days. They flushed the toilet, took showers.
You just screamed at them every time they did that now.
I just turned off the hot
You got
water.
bigger problems than
Right.
wastewater.
So next adjournment, I'll have this quarter to use the bathroom.
Right.
Well, it just, being in perspective, I think is,
Yep.
and then the days, and so I really appreciate the explanation. I think it does help. And then some of those who said their percentage went 238% increase, it's like, wait a minute. I looked at mine, it's like, it went up exactly what I thought it would.
Yeah.
Right. So with that, obviously we all know why we're gathered here tonight, to continue our conversation on on our efforts towards a park and recreation district, and some of the homework we're doing as a result of the community survey that came back. Wanted to thank staff for all the preparation. I know after our last meeting there was a lot of assignments and homework and fact gathering that took place, and we're all looking forward to seeing the results of that. But thank you for all the work you put in between. I did want to tell council, this effort is going to be it's going to be a hard lift in this community. And so, at least my intention as we enter our discussions tonight is I would really like to see us be unanimous. And as as I lead the discussion, you're probably going to you're going to see me trying to play devil's advocate and try to find middle ground in ways for us to come together and all of us coalesce behind a singular idea and vision. Sometimes that doesn't always work out that way, in elected bodies, and it may not go that way. But I want to set that tone that I really would like to see all of us try to move into that direction. And while we're not going to get to final decisions tonight, nor should we, so we still have important meetings with our Parks Advisory Committee and those kinds of things. Let's try to all find a way towards a plan together as a united front. And then with that, I just want to address that we will have public comment tonight. Public comment will be at the end of the meeting. Our charter does allow me to, as the presiding officer, to set certain rules. This is a work session for our council. If people want to participate in the discussion, I will provide a warning. After a single warning, I will ask to leave the meeting. This needs to be a meeting, an opportunity for council to discuss and work together. And while we want community feedback, we're putting it at the end of the meeting so that we're not receiving community feedback at the beginning And then there's a lot of things discussed, and that's not true community feedback. We're putting it at the very end so that we can hear feedback on the direction of stuff that we're going. There's gonna be an opportunity for that, but I'd really like to not have interruptions during our meeting, okay? With that, Gordon, again, thanks for all the work.
Yep.
Go ahead and take us off.
So I want to preface sort of our meeting or the workshop tonight that, you know, it's supposed to be an open dialogue, continuing the conversation that the council had a goal setting. I mean, this meeting was kind of created on the spot that night, recognizing that there was a lot of questions that still need to be answered and, you know, a tight timeline to answer those questions. And, yeah, I do appreciate all staff's work to pull what we have so far together to start formulating some ideas and budgets and possible tax rates and things like that. But that being said, there's still lots of work to be done. And so our expectation isn't that we're gonna come out of tonight with, okay, this is what the district's gonna be, these are the boundaries, this is the tax rate, you know, done. That maybe some alternatives come out, maybe, you know, some direction from you about move the boundary this way a little bit, that way a little bit, include this, don't include that. And then, you know, come back with more options, refine the numbers, and then also another outcome of this meeting is a little more clarity on the process and sort of the next steps going forward to get it on the ballot. So there's several main questions that, you know, we still need to discuss and continue the conversation. The big ones, of course, are the district purpose and continuing that conversation about parks and recreation versus just recreation and aquatics versus community campus focused, or you know, including other cities like Estacada and their parks and recreation, and even things like senior services, right? The boundary, we have some maps prepared, and then we've kind of have some different scenarios for tax rates based on assessed values of different boundaries and how far we go, you know, to the east and the south, and how that the boundary conversation and the purpose conversation very much so feeds into the tax rate. And it'll be interesting to hear that conversation tonight about what your political instincts are in terms of what we would put on a poll and then ultimately a measure for a permanent tax rate for the district. And then finally, so, you know, we've been doing research, we've been reaching out to the county, Special Districts Association of Oregon, and then other special districts in Oregon about the formation process and what is the realistic timeline and process that we have for RS 198 to make it on the ballot in November. And so we'll talk a little bit about that tonight too, and share that information. And so just you know, a reminder that we're talking about, and I'm sure you'd love to read the state statutes on this, but how districts are created are governed by ORS 198, and the district that we're talking in particular, a Parks and Recreation District, which includes things like an aquatics district, or a parks district, or a recreation district, are governed by ORS 266. I think one of the questions that have come up about, you know, the future, what does this look like in terms of the governing board, and can they be elected by zones and things like that? The answer is yes. We can set up zones how we like, or and then those zones are allowed through the RS 266 statute. So the first question, and this is, I think, the continuation of the conversation from before is, what really are we talking about here in terms of this district? You know, we don't have to get into the fun things like what is the name of this district. I'm sure we can have a great debate over that, or get community input on that.
No, let's just do that.
But you know, this question the answer to this question, as you talk about this, may change as you see other information kind of come out in terms of what these different district or different services cost. So, you know, we know for sure it's aquatics, right? That's sort of the first reason why we're here. And then we start, you know, talking about expanding to including recreation, like I said, you know, programming, leagues, special events. And then we start talking about having a new community center at this community campus, and we've prepared some cost estimates on what a recreation center would cost to operate, and those were based on the study done by the sub-consultants part of the master planning process with the campus. The aquatics and the recreation costs were based on our existing budget. So basically it's taking that department and moving it to the district. And then the question about parks, you know, the development of new parks and parks maintenance are also the city of Sandy's budget. Sorry.
Just Sandy though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Are you going to make any assumptions or anything based on, you know, communities like Boring or, I mean, I know it's really tough to do.
Yeah, for recreation, I think we included a 10% sort of inflator, based on growing programs, and so, you know, getting a little more revenue, but there's a little more cost associated with trying to grow programs for serving a wider, you know, population. You know, we also already serve a greater population than Sandy, so, you know, it's not like we're gonna double the amount of programs, it's really, just trying to grow it a little bit now that it's its own district. And then the question too about, will this district include all of our community services, such as the senior center? Especially if, you know, the idea is to build a new multi-generational facility at the campus, does that mean moving the senior center over there? And maybe it's a joint partnership or something like that, or maybe, you know, they take on those services within their permanent tax rate. And
When
so.
you're talking about recreation, do you just mean outdoor?
Well, if it's a multi-generational facility, it could definitely be indoor, you know, if the district wants to build, you know, a facility that has multi-purpose rooms and fitness and, you know, a gym or things like that. It's sort of an unknown at this point. So any kind of guess on what the year 3 budget might be for a rec center, you know.
Just depends if it's a revenue generating type facility or more of a community service facility.
Yeah. So then, I think to help that conversation too is to take a look at actually what are those numbers. These are the cost estimates for, you know, those different services, and like I said, they're basically from either our budget or from the operating analysis for the rec center. We included Estacadas Parks as a line here, and what this is just the total expenditures.
You got
right,
that from
versus net.
Estacada?
Yeah, the Estacada budget.
This is net.
This is net, so this is, this takes into account that there's also program revenues, that these functions generate, right? So these are what the, property tax revenue would need to be.
Do you have any assumptions about what these mean, what the outputs are? I assume that comes up a little bit, or is that just,
Yeah, and.
when will that be discussed?
Yeah, we can dive into more of the detail on like the rec center, but other than that, it's currently what we're doing.
Okay, so it's a status current.
For year 1, it's
Assumption,
current. For
okay.
year 3, for some of these, so you notice that the costs go up.
Yeah, why the exponential difference between year 1 and year 2 for aquatics?
Because that's assuming, you know, per the results of the survey, the public would be interested in a renovation with maybe a small expansion,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
So.
Very good. Thank you.
So you are assuming expansion?
That's
Yeah.
$5 million of debt service starting in year 2.
Gotcha.
I'm assuming that Tanya participated in those numbers?
Yeah, and Tony couldn't be here tonight because of the family emergency, but she did. She helped put the budgets together, do the estimates. So would you want me to just go through the presentation and then you guys go into the?
Yeah, let's do
Okay.
that.
That's fine.
If you feel like that'd be the best way to do it,
Get us up.
you put it together.
Yeah, I mean, it could work either way. It's,
So,
yeah,
present.
get through the information and
Okay.
we can jump around on slides and all that.
Okay.
So, what we did to kind of anticipate sort of these thought experiments is, in different scenarios, is to kind of break it down in, you know, basically additive. You know, if you had aquatics, year 1, here's what it costs, year 2, year 3. Once you start adding recreation, you're probably gonna have a little bit of administrative department, where you might have the Parks and Recreation District Director and maybe some administrative staff now that you're, you know, running programs and might have an office and things like that, so you start adding, you know, that cost, and then, I mean, kind of see how this works, aquatics, administration, recreation, rec center. And again, I mean, I'm gonna probably repeat this a lot, these numbers, you know, are based off, you know, our budgets and our best cost estimates, but, you know, we did this in a week, you know, as when we're we're developing our own budgets, you know, we take months to do it, and, they are line item budgets that we've prepared, but they definitely can be scrutinized and, you know, different, you know, basically budget scenarios to be developed.
And
Would you consider what you did to be optimistic or conservative?
Probably, I mean, usually when
Where
we
did
do
you
budgets,
try to lean?
it's probably conservative, to be honest. You know, I think there's probably a little bit of debate depending on the size, like how much administration you might need or something like that. But what we need to be, so, you know, keep this in mind with creating a new district. What you need to remember is setting a permanent tax rate is setting a permanent tax rate, right? And you're always cautioned not to set that thing too tight, because they're gonna be hit with the same things that any public agency, especially if they join PERS. They're gonna have rising costs, they're gonna have demands on programs like we've seen as a city. They're gonna have more, those demands shifted to them. They want more programming, they want more hours, they want more, you know, different, activities. And if you set it too low, they can't increase that. And actually Madras and a couple other districts that have been created are in that situation now, where they don't have enough money to operate because they've gotten too big.
I'd like to see us lean the other way.
Yeah, have a little cushion in there.
It's
And-
much harder to go out for a supplemental later.
Right. And the difficulty in this too, is that we still don't have, you know, we have the community survey says there is interest in doing stuff with the campus, which may or may not be on the district, maybe the city does the development of the park and stuff, but in terms of that rec center, we don't really know yet what that will look like, how big would it be operated at, we, you know, that one definitely we took a good guess at, but, you know, that thing, you know, may not be up and running for another 3 to 5 years. And speaking of timelines on this stuff too, another thing I want to council recognizes, there is a year lag in terms of when a district is established until they can actually start operating, because the revenue from the property taxes don't get collected for another year. Some districts have done some creative stuff where they've borrowed money from the city or something like that to get it up and running at least, so they have a running start. But, you know, we're talking a pretty substantial sum to open up a pool and start operating.
So we're talking a year before construction, and then another year, you know, just I'm
Possibly.
estimating, right?
Unless
We're
they
all-
decide, let's just open up the pool the way it is now,
Oh,
you
is
know,
it-
but.
Is it possible, because it would be for improvements, to use urban renewal money for some of that and then have that money paid back? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
If that money were paid back from the district?
So it would be a loan to the
Right.
district, you mean? Is it gonna be in the urban renewal area?
Yes,
Yes.
it's already designated
So,
for
yeah.
it. We could use it tomorrow for the pool.
Right.
So it would just be a loan.
Okay, yeah, I think so.
I mean, I don't even think it has to be a loan, I think it's already an urban renewal project for the city.
Right,
But we
but we
wanna
can
use
get that
those
money
funds
back,
for the
right?
community
Yeah.
center, so we would want those
I
money
see.
back.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's one way to get a year head start,
Right.
right? The district
Right.
passes.
Delay the
and get in
community
there and
center a
start.
little bit while we do,
While we take care of the pool.
Anyways.
Anyway, just wanted to know, thank you.
And so again, more scenarios, and you see how the numbers start to quickly add up when you start adding, parks, and then especially with Estacada, and then we add seniors, you're getting into what our general fund annual budget is, so, a pretty sizable, you know, budget for a district. And how this plays a role, right, again, is how big is the boundary? The bigger the boundary, the more taxpayers you have, meaning the more assessed value, which means, you know, you can start to lower the tax rate, but you'll see that it doesn't necessarily get you that much, right? There's not like a gold mine of a lot of assessed value that we can pull in unless the boundaries are pretty large.
How often, when you look around, are seniors included versus not included in this kind of district scenario? Senior services usually handled by the city municipality, or are they lumped a lot of times into a parks and rec
I don't
district?
know, I have an exact answer. I think it's a mix.
Okay.
A lot of them are nonprofits and not a part of a district or the city.
Right.
And so that was, the difficulty trying to even get, you know, comparable costs for what does this look like? Estacada's a nonprofit, are we gonna go and absorb their nonprofit and stuff, or would the district go and absorb their nonprofit, or would the seniors, you know, just remain as a Sandy
service and not part of Estacada, but that was part of the district. So there's some unknowns definitely with the city of services.
Thank you.
It'd be interesting to see what Westland, and I only say Westland because when we do the city dinners for the last X amount of years, it seems to always be held there, or more often than not it's there. It seems like it's just a senior center, not the rest of it.
I'm pretty sure that's a city.
And I believe it's a city owned, but.
It seems like the seniors are not an issue until we can get the bunker building done, and then we could sell the building they have now.
Okay, yeah.
So it feeds into the next question, what is the proposed boundary? And again, there was a good conversation about this and some ideas floated about where that kind of makes sense. Metro, sounded like a good barrier on the west side, given, the tax difference between outside of Metro and inside of Metro. We looked at, the overall Oregon Trail School District and using that as some of the boundaries for the other quadrants. Of course, for the process that we're looking is within Clackamas County, and other things to be aware of is the proposal down at Hoodland with the Hoodland Parks and Recreation District that is I believe is the Welch's school boundary within the Oregon Trail School District.
Let me take a second to address that. So this, last week, Steve Brown with the Sandy Post reached out to George and I. One of their co-chairs had written an editorial, and submitted to some of the local papers, a little agitated that, they're 2 years into their process. You can imagine it's an all volunteer ran process, meaning, so that's a lot of work. A little agitated that maybe, that we're quickly kind of moving along on ours, and that the mixed messages going into their community about their effort versus what we're trying to do, the overlapping districts, it's just, there was a lot of worry coming from that board that we were kind of screwing up their efforts, pretty legitimate ones. What I had asked Steve was to hold off for a week and allow me an opportunity to talk to this individual. I was able to do so. What I communicated to her was, it's just where we're at in our process, that we're at a very beginning stage. I let her know that we are very aware of what they're doing up there and what their boundaries are. And while I can't speak for all council, that it does, from our previous conversations, we had been, it had seemed, and the room was leaning towards not going that far up the mountain, and to try to kind of let them continue on what they're doing. And again, I said kind of the way we're all minded is I think we'd probably all be really excited regionally to see both us and up the mountain doing such great things with their parks and recreation. So she agreed. She pulled back the editorial from the Mountain Times as well as from the Post. I said, no, this isn't 100%. I can't speak for everyone. I said, I'll call you immediately if council starts going a different direction and let you know. But I did think with our meetings this week and going with our Parks Committee next week, we were kind of making a mountain out of a molehill there a little bit. We weren't really ready to start fighting when we should probably be trying to lift each other up. So just wanted to make everybody aware of those conversations that I had.
And then the County Library District is another, sort of natural boundary. And I'll also add here that my conversations with the county assessor's office, their preference is strongly that you use already existing taxing districts. It's much easier, and it helps with errors. It's more of their problem than our problem, but it does also make it easier for us to draw boundaries. So.
What's included in the county, what are you
Oh,
gonna
you're
show us?
gonna show
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so like that.
Like that, huh? Okay.
So here's a map, yeah.
This map, the orange is the Goodwood area.
Yeah, that is,
The Goodwood
there's a couple
area.
different maps in there, and sorry, again, we're still making lots of, and you can give us direction to make all sorts of different maps,
You want me to know that?
Oh, yeah, I like that.
You like so?
Yeah.
I stay up till 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah, but this gives you kind of a shot of like, here are all these different lines on the map of different options, and, how we can shape this thing is really, at this point, without, going out to the public yet, we have an opportunity to kind of, give it a first shot on what makes sense, all these different factors I talked about. So, you see how far the Sandy Library District goes out to as opposed to the Hoodland Library District. around that line, so on this map that's on the screen, there's the Mount Hood corridor. I had us look at the community planning organizations, because if we were gonna do public outreach, those are good places to start, is going to people that are already engaged and with, cities and counties. So the Mount Hood CPO, boundary there, is kind of where it meets 26, I think is about where the Welch's school district boundary is. So it's on, definitely on, more towards the west than Welch's. So that would be where the Hoodland Parks District, I believe.
That's what she was expressing.
Yeah. So, you see the metro boundary on here, and where that.
Where's that? Sorry.
That's
Oh,
the.
boring.
It's the purple line
Yeah.
in those.
Yeah, that's about as far as I'd wanna go.
And then you see the difference between, say, the Oregon Trail School District boundary to the south versus, the Sandy Library District. There's a little bit of give and take there, right? There's a little bit more in Eagle Creek on the school district, but then, further south, on the library district.
This goes way out to Government Camp, right?
The library district?
No, the Oregon Trail.
Oregon
Yeah,
Trail.
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
the full
It
Oregon
really
Trail School
does
District.
get in the face of the folks up
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So,
it's just natural.
I'm not as good at reading maps as Jeremy. The library, district, I'm trying to compare that to where the metro boundary is in Boring. Are we, yeah,
I can't see it on the west end, you know where the
Yeah.
west end is?
so we're a little bit in there, a little bit past that metro
Yeah, the
boundary.
library district
It
does
is,
go into.
yeah.
But not
Oh, I see.
not
That's-
hugely. Yeah.
Not by much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, didn't Metro change their boundary with Boring? Did that go through? They get out of Metro?
No,
Part
part of.
Just the
Just
triangle.
Just
Okay.
triangle.
All right. I know they were trying, there was discussion.
So how big, so take us through, your takeaway talking to them, Jeremy, Jordan. How big of a deal is this boundary business as far as using existing versus drawing our own? Truly, how big of a deal, especially knowing our timeline?
I think it's doable. I think there's a preference.
Yeah.
For
Sure,
using
'cause it's easier.
existing. Yeah.
A lot of extra time.
It,
Well,
just
takes a
from
lot of time.
just from a staff time
There you
to
go.
selecting individual parcels and stuff, just churning out a few of these maps takes time, and then extracting the data for each property and filtering that. It's not like it doesn't take months, but it just adds another layer.
How hard would
layer
it
and all
be,
that.
how hard would it be to take that library district boundary and incorporate Eagle Creek and Estacada into that boundary?
So we have a few different options that we started looking at. This is just the urban reserve, this is the library district. When we refine these maps, we'll pull off
Sure.
the tax lots and stuff. Then you look at, total CPOs, so like the purple is, Eagle Creek, CPO, which, I think the next step, if you can't align with other taxing districts, maybe using census tracts and existing boundaries that are in the database already, like the CPOs or whatever,
Sure.
make it a little bit easier.
Sure.
And plus, again, from just a community engagement
I
standpoint.
love it.
You use those.
Is Eagle Creek's County Park included in that?
We don't have parks on the map, we can add those
Are
to
you,
see.
are you talking like Barton?
No,
Eagle
Eagle
Fern.
Creek, Eagle
Eagle
Fern Park.
Eagle Fern.
Gotcha, gotcha.
The one thing to keep in the back of your mind is Boring has actually really enjoyed the relationship with Clackamas Parks as far as that, trailhead, the trailhead,
Oh,
they
yeah.
call it there.
The Cazadero and the Spring Lumber? The
Yeah,
Cazadero
yeah,
Trail.
they've really enjoyed that relationship,
Yeah.
just has to come from their CPO.
But to answer your question,
Yes.
the boundaries actually do not need to be contiguous, so.
Okay.
You could have a boundary up here, you could have Sandy and just
Right.
add Estacada
Right,
in a given
okay,
district.
very good.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be that, okay.
And then
Oh, I
you can see.
didn't
You
Eagle
need to
Creek-
have Estacada City Council approved.
Oh, wow, yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, they need to
They're like,
pass,
no.
similar to Sandy City Council has to pass a resolution to support this, Estacada would too. But, Eagle Creek does extend all the way to Estacada, so if you're doing Eagle Creek, and Estacada were still interested. So, we looked at a couple different options, and there's plenty more scenarios. I mean, this is where, you know, honestly, if you want us to print maps and you guys wanna get markers out and have fun, go for it, or we're happy to continue different, scenarios. But, you know, we looked at, some different options, as basically giving us, you know, a start, on looking at assessed values, so that we can apply the operating costs and the budget for these and figure out a tax rate. So Sandy is, you know, under, you know, $1 trillion or $1 billion of, assessed value, Estacada is 317, the full, you know, sorry, this is so that, those.
So you get a percentage of the assessed value.
Yeah.
What are these
So
numbers?
city limits, 896 million, so we'd identify a percentage of that, and that's what we can anticipate from revenue, based off of the percentage of the assessed values.
Right, so property taxes are based off assessed value, taxable assessed value, so if you get at that number, you divide by 1,000, and times it by the proposed tax rate, and that tax rate that we set will match, you know, and plus maybe a little cushion to what those budgets that we showed for those different scenarios would be, cause those are the net costs of what property tax, revenue you need.
I'm surprised that Estacada's value is as much as it is, like a third of ours.
They're growing.
Maybe they're about a third
These are
of the size
assessed
of us,
values.
you know.
Okay.
3,000, yeah. So the Sandy Library District is 2.2. The Sandy Urban Reserve is much more than the Sandy City Limits. If you saw that map, this map, that's our urban reserve. And, you know, the policy question there for council is, you know, do people outside the Sandy Reserve boundary use the pool and our programs and stuff? And we provide an answer. The Oregon Trail School District, less the Welch's school territory or boundary, that the Hoodland is looking at is 2.1 million. I mean, sorry, billion. These numbers are getting so big. And then, you know, the full Oregon Trail School District all the way up the mountain is, you know, 3.5 billion, so.
I like example two, I'm just saying out loud.
I was thinking the other way around, Stan.
What's that?
Throw things out. I mean, this is a pretty obvious one for me.
Yeah.
Oregon School District is gone. I would maybe want to do that.
Yep.
It's just these big minerals, you just cut 1.4 billion.
Yeah. No, but
They're-
but
Please,
I'm
you're
just,
right, you're right.
sorry, lighting the mood, but yeah, it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
just cut 1.4 billion.
That
Yeah.
will put you in the
I like
budget.
Or
the
1.3 billion.
I actually, I
like
think.
number two, I like the
number-
library district not including metro, and then if you take that and then incorporate what
That's the
Estacada
decision.
has, then you've got another, you know, you're looking at five.
Third of a million.
Yep, 5.3 almost.
So, I'll explain this, so we put a little matrix together to kind of give you more round numbers, just because, until we like get an actual boundary, but that scenario you just outlined, Estacada plus the library district is about, you know, 2.5 billion, and you see when this is probably hard to see, we have a printout, but, in this matrix, for each of the different, you know, district scopes, like, if it's just aquatics with 2.5 billion, in the first year to just operate the pool as is 26 cents. By the third year with the expanded, pool, you're looking at 47, right?
26 cents per thousand.
Per thousand.
Per thousand, right, yep.
Catch me up here, which line, I found your map now, your matrix, which line across are we
So,
talking
you
about?
know, this is where you're gonna be on a whole nother planet.
So, I was looking at the 2.5, so 1, 2, 3, the fourth,
Okay.
column over, and then
Oh,
just
all right,
one.
that's Estacada plus
26 cents, it's like
library.
30.
There's a slide.
Oh.
How much?
Don't stress out yet.
I'm not stressed, I'm just jumping ahead.
Okay. I got it. All right, finally, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason we did year 1 and year 3 again is you saw in those budgets by year 3 for some of these things, you have a rec center and expanded pool, that, you know, your costs could be higher, which means, you know, you're probably gonna set that tax rate at least the year 3 level. Or what districts can do when they're formed is have, you know, a higher tax rate, but not actually levy that you can set it, and then for the first couple of years, only collect what you need, and then if you do need more, you can raise it. They'll have their own budget committee and own, board that can do that by adopting the budget resolution.
That's what we did with our conservation district. We started out, and then by the 5th year, we were at the rate, full rate.
So that first column is basically like the city example, and that you can see just with having, one building assessed value, the numbers get pretty high, pretty quick. Right. So they answer that question about what that means for the average taxpayer, and this is within city limits in the city of Sandy, so we would have to look at countywide what that average assessed value is for, for whatever that proposed district is, but this is for.
This is just for the city.
City of Sandy.
Okay.
Is this residential or is this all property?
All property.
All property.
Residential, I think, is closer to 203.
Yeah.
Oh. But you would-
203,000 for.
Yeah.
You would never take the commercial out though, would you? Would we?
No.
No.
So
No,
you
why
can't.
would you ever think about that? So it's just 2.5.
Well, I think if you're articulating a message to, residential families about what your property taxes on your $200,000 home versus what the
So it-
tax value, assessed value is for overall, that's a different message maybe depending on the group of people you're talking to. It's not a huge difference dollar wise, but just an item to keep in mind.
You got calculators?
If I look at it right,
So when
my
we-
place is paying about $9 a month for the aquatics plus recreation, 2.5.
No, you're paying more.
Is that
than
right?
that.
Yeah.
How much your house assessed value?
Figure 400.
Okay, you're gonna be paying over $260.
Well, I was thinking
Hundreds
190
of-
is what I.
The library's more than that.
Yeah.
Pay full.
So when we've, I've been with multiple colleges for general obligation bonds, but we usually put a calculator out for voters to be able to see what the true impact
Right,
is.
right.
So you can actually calculate it out and learn. I know locally, that's been an unpopular thing, is what's presented and then what actually happens on the tax bill. So,
Yeah.
my neighborhood, I had some folks even with the water bill discussion, not too happy with my neighborhood, but they're even more not happy about the school district bond and how much they ended up paying, and some of them served on the committee. But like this last year, my property taxes were $7,300, and I paid $349 for my house, and the assessed values have gone up dramatically in the area.
Oh, yeah.
So I think what I don't like to do, for just full transparency, is give the worst case scenario for folks so that they can actually see it's not nothing, it's not cheap, because you add another, because for my house, I'd probably be looking at $500 more a year, on that increased tax, and that's a crap load of money. That's almost $8,000 in property taxes. So,
Yeah.
If we were on the ballot with the school district, they'd probably vote for us.
it might be a cheaper option too, maybe the cheaper option.
Yeah, that's an old sales trick right there.
Our average is about $300,000 a house right now, assessed value. Give me a number for, column 2, recreation, aquatics and recreation, what would that
Go
value
back to
be?
can you go back to your previous sheet? So which one are you looking at?
2.5, the Estacada plus the library.
Okay.
Aquatics and recreation, $300,000 house is about an average in Sandy. What's that gonna mean yearly? I got about $10 a month and John got about 20, so give me a number here.
In year 1 or year 3?
One, start out with one.
It's $144 a year, so what's that,
About
$12 a month?
$12 a month.
Year 3.
Well, I closed my calculator, so.
And then
Let's
take
say,
your head?
18 off the top of my head.
18, yeah, it's
Okay.
about
That'd be about right.
So
That's $300,000 assessed home.
which is you think about Cascadia and.
Yeah, the newer homes,
The older,
yeah.
older homes are gonna be much more, 400, a lot of 400s in that. stuff.
Well, that might be the real market value, but not the
The
assessed
assessed,
value.
right.
So I just sold my home for $440, the assessed value was $239.
Right.
So, I mean,
That's why I
there's a
said use
pretty
300.
significant
We're on the
difference
assessed.
between.
We're on the
yes,
assessed.
There is a big
Based off
difference
assessed.
between
Not
market
market.
value and
So
assessed
League
value.
organization wants to change that, I wonder why.
Yeah. Surprise.
But if it was 280 or whatever that is, it's gonna be $10 instead of 12. 15 versus 18 or something, so it's gonna be in the teens.
Coffee. You spend that on coffee.
I don't know, it feels like it's $12 a month.
Mhm.
No, I just did 30.
What are we,
With the people that are spending that on coffee are going, now you're taking the coffee away. So you just took it away with my.
And that's, and to be honest, just to set that, the tone of that, that's fine, right? That's what this, that's what the vote's all
Yeah,
about,
that's what
right?
it is.
I mean,
They
that,
get to decide
they asked
that.
us to put together, they wanted, basically, the way I took that survey is our community said, how much would it be to do this?
That's it.
Let's see what it would be, tell us what it would be, and then we'll vote on whether or not we wanna do it or not, right? And I can live with those consequences, but to John's point, let's be transparent,
Yep,
let
I
people
agree.
really know what they're, what
yeah.
they'd be paying. right?
And don't forget too, we're gonna do, there is another survey that will be done.
Right,
So
that'll-
we'll be able to get more information as far as the appetite of the public to do something like this.
So maybe we should pick 2 scenarios for the
Yeah.
survey.
Absolutely.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
So I wonder if using the library district would be, because library district is 39 cents per thousand assessed value. If that would be helpful to sort of compare, like, what that does for,
And they would tell you that's an exceptionally low rate. Yeah.
it's not great.
So maybe just to jump back a little bit, I know we're looking at that 2.5 billion, but I think we probably need to have a couple plans.
Yeah.
Like, we know which ones maybe are like completely off the list for us, but if 2.5, if there are key stakeholders that are not bought in, so like if, say, Estacada's involved in that one and they're like, nah, we're good, we're gonna do our own thing, and they don't wanna vote and pass it,
But-
or be a part of it.
With Estacada, so we've got the 2.5, but then including Estacada, doesn't that put us closer to 5.3? Because they had to do, because you're combining, right?
They're.
That would,
No.
be combined would be 2.5, if we combine with just
Not
Estacada.
5. You're on the wrong numbers.
Some
Estacada's
of them are encompassed in the others.
almost 4.
So it's not an
Right.
add.
But not Estacada. Estacada, we
that'd be
left out, is always added.
It's
Oh,
300
okay.
million
Yeah.
versus 2 point.
Oh, 300 million.
Because
Gotcha.
Estacada's, it's
2.2.
not
Sorry,
an OTS.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys made some really good assumptions on this staff, really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
that's good.
So I mean, maybe we got number 2 seems like what folks are somewhat drawn towards.
It's
But
what's
the
been in my head.
second best one up there,
Well,
if not that?
Well, to your point, John, but just playing off of last meeting, just to kind of bring up speed. Number 2, you're right, example number 2 is where I think everyone's gonna coalesce behind, and then where we're really split is with the Estacada decision, right? And so that's gonna be that big decision for this group to decide whether to include that or not.
Well, we were pretty strong when it comes to even the library boundary. We're close to 70%, yes. We didn't know the number yet, what the price is, but I think we ought to take this as far as we think we can and make sure that we've got enough. Because the more we cover, like you're
Yeah.
saying,
The better,
Jordan, the
right.
better, so let's
Yeah. Mhm.
go as large as we think we
I
can.
mean, to
without
answer
getting in
your,
trouble.
question, I guess, John, I think our next best examples up there are gonna be 1 and 4. 1, obviously, there's more money, 4 is probably more realistic, but,
So
I
it's,
don't know.
just to address the politics there.
Sure.
The one reason I really liked, the metro boundary line is it's just just the revenue opportunities that Metro's
Absolutely.
currently going after priority wise. You know, they just did their own parks
Mhm.
land deal, they're gonna do a transportation deal, they just did a housing bond. I feel like we would have a lot of fatigue in that metro area. I wanna win.
Right,
And
oh,
doesn't
I
that
agree.
leave out Boring, which might be a difficult place to pass?
Yeah.
So that leaves us with 4 then, I think.
4 still takes you into that metro area though.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
That's
Doesn't
correct.
it? The Oregon
Small
Trail
amount,
School
though.
District.
Very small
I mean,
amount, right?
again,
Yeah,
we can
right,
carve
we
these
can
up.
take some of it.
Because
Sure.
we
You
can
know,
carve
these are just
out, yeah,
examples.
the-
Those are
the-
existing examples, we can make our own.
Yeah, carve it out.
Absolutely. I mean, you can add
So
Eagle
maybe
Creek
you wanna
days.
exclude Boring out of the Oregon Trail School District and Welch's out of the.
Well, not necessarily
Or could
boring,
you-
but that metro line.
Or could you
Yeah.
take example one, go back one, so thank you, could you take example one and carve out the metro component? Cause you'd still get Eagle Creek.
That is going west to Metro, to the line, right?
Right.
Is that what that means, stops at the Metro on the west?
Or does that include that?
Oh, it stops at Metro.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So no
In
Metro
all
on
these
that,
scenarios, yeah.
just
Okay.
not part of Oregon Trail?
So that could be it.
Wait, all these scenarios you had stop at metro?
No, no.
No, the example 4 includes that tiny corner of Metro.
Okay.
Just a tiny corner though.
Yep.
But
And
the rest
then,
no.
Example one doesn't?
example 5 includes Metro also, because that was the entirety of Oregon Trail School District.
Oh, okay.
Example
Yeah.
1 did not.
But one does not.
So one does not include Metro?
Yeah.
So I think that's the one, the second example then,
What?
my 2 cents.
One?
So
Example
Jordan,
one.
question I have for you is, so the cost projections that we did, the more people we include, the likelihood our costs increase as well too.
I don't know.
So like the more friends we bring along to the party, the more party we have to have. And did you measure that against where the different boundaries might be and the impact on the different boundaries?
No, we haven't
Okay.
gone through that layer, and
John,
for
you know-
recreation, like I said, it was like a 10%, add to programming.
Cause the taxpayers, I mean, if we extend it out far enough, people are paying tax, they're gonna expect something. So does this mean they get into the rec center, the pool for free, and now we're not generating, or it's a reduced price?
Right.
There's gonna be a what's in it for me, and so we extend it out, we decrease our revenue by extending it out, but we also bring in additional tax revenue. Where's that breaking point
Right.
between the two?
I'm not sure I agree with that argument. I think about the athletic club down here. They love me because I go there 3 days a week when I'm really doing well, and I wanna use that money, but it's, I suspect that'll be the same thing with aquatic. Many people will buy into it, but they may not use it. Like, there'll be some families that won't use it at all.
The only difference with the athletic club is this would be like you're paying taxes to have a membership at a discounted rate, and you're paying for a membership. So it's like you're paying for it.
Still paying to use a
pay
pool.
taxes.
Yeah, you're paying for it twice essentially.
I
But
would
yeah,
think
at a
it might be
reduced
some
rate.
Yeah.
modification of that though.
But that's
And it
kind
just
of,
seems
That's also
but
up to
that's
the
kind of the
district.
model everybody
Yeah.
uses, right?
Yeah, and that's up to.
I'm
the
just
district,
asking if
so.
we looked at it that way from the cost projections,
Sure.
cause the cost will go up based off of who we're serving.
One thing I just wanted to quickly point out, I'm not sure if everybody realizes this sort of subtle point, is, as you're getting the boundaries drawn, the conversation that you have with the county, regardless of which way this is to proceed, if you're gonna ask the county to just initiate it, form it, or if you were to go through a more traditional, let's get signatures and do that. One way or the other, that process, ends up with a county hearing, board, county commissioners. And they do have the discretion to say, well, we don't think this piece over here really benefits from it, so we're gonna take that out. They also have the discretion to say, well, we think this piece over here would, we're gonna put that in. I have no idea, that's largely a political question ultimately. There are some standards in the statute, but it's, they get
You're not-
a decent amount of
You're not
discretion.
clairvoyant, you can't tell us what.
Do you
those
wanna
are.
have that conversation
So,
about signature gathering versus that, or?
Oh, that was like the last slide.
yeah,
So-
and this will be true either way. So I just wanna say, as you're thinking about that boundary, just kinda have that in the back of your mind that,
Just cause it
The
produces a
reality is
bigger
you're gonna-
number doesn't necessarily mean
they
the
could
county's
look,
gonna
someone,
agree.
I don't know what the
Yeah.
board's view of it would be, but they could look at that and say, well, gosh, it's so big, how would this property over here ever benefit from?
Or they could say, wow, it's pretty easy, it's just a library district, that seems like an easy, it's already been in place.
Yep, You're aligning with an
Existing and it's worked for 50 years.
Yeah.
And
Or
so-
you could do library district plus, or library district minus.
Right.
Yeah, the library district minus question I had is, do you wanna set the line at the Walton school boundary?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cause that will carve off.
Of course, off a chunk of the library.
I want us to keep remembering that this is this very shortened project time, so anytime we do complexity and add that to the staff time, we need more time, so I'm a little bit more for rounding, picking existing boundaries if that.
But you gotta
then
cut
go-
out Welch's though. You gotta-
Right, but there's some things you just have to do politically, but I think then
I'm
we
fine
can
with
round
it.
off,
Yeah.
let's do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree, totally
The
agree.
school districts have zones of this zone,
Just cut off
the
that
school
zone.
district you can cut off.
Yeah.
So there is a question on that, cause those zone boundaries change, and they were talking about changing that boundary for the schools.
This year.
Again, you do it every so many years when population changes, right?
Do we
So-
anticipate that happening this year though?
I don't anticipate it this year, but I've heard that in talks.
And who
rumors.
who has that authority?
School districts.
But it won't
Meaning the-
change the park
Change the
district.
boundary.
But they're just initially going with the current boundary,
Right.
and then when it changes, it doesn't follow.
No, I guess.
So if we use the school district boundaries and then move the boundaries, it could include or exclude as they change boundaries.
Correct.
Oh.
It would stay static.
But we're not.
The park's boundary would stay static, but school
The
boundary.
school,
wouldn't,
where the child goes.
If
We
we
just
built,
wouldn't be
if we
linked up.
built it off of that initially and they moved it, it doesn't change that the
No.
person's part of the parks district. It just doesn't align with the school
Anymore.
district.
Yeah.
I'd be concerned about people not getting a chance to vote for or against this, so if it did change and that person couldn't
It
vote
wouldn't
for
change.
It would.
It's not gonna
Okay.
change.
Got it.
Okay.
And I feel like we're in agreement, right, we're not going with the Oregon Trail School District boundary.
But
I didn't-
even
I
if you
didn't-
cut off
I
the
didn't
west-
hear anything at this
I'm
table.
feeling,
so-
I mean, I'm, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, example two's jumping out at the group and not including Metro? Or is it, or if there's.
It's example two at the Hoodland, at the
Right.
Welch's boundary.
Yes.
and
Yes.
not including that.
Yes.
I'm flip-flopping between 1 and 2.
Well, if we're looking at giving two options potentially for the survey, then
Yeah.
I say that those are the two
Give
that
those
we,
two options.
that we go.
That, does that include Estacada or not? It does not. It includes
Well, we
Eagle-
include
it includes
Estacada.
Eagle- No, but it includes Eagle Creek in
Right,
example one.
but we throw Estacada into
And,
those, yeah.
well, let's talk about that later, but yeah, okay? So those will be our two options, example one and example
and
two.
two.
With this kid.
Does everybody agree with that?
Well, we're gonna talk Estacada here in a bit.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I think, you know, with what's going on right now with the Vultures one, I think that might be the best. Otherwise, I have a different answer.
Just, I guess I have to ask the question, if that was not on the ballot.
If that was not on the ballot, I'd
I mean, it's
say-
not on the ballot, yeah, but when it is.
I like existing boundary lines, so I like,
Okay.
the school district boundary line, because Sandy is the home and where everyone considers their, they may live in Welch, but the city of Sandy is kind of their hub for everything, you know, and that's just part of the school district and how it is. The Sandy Library District, it's already got that kind of formation on that, it makes sense. Then you get down even smaller, the city limits, and then that, it's a little smaller than we need, but.
Catherine? I'm sorry, I thought you were gonna go ahead.
No, that's, so to answer your question, if they weren't on that, I'd be leaning more towards the school.
What's the plus one on that?
You with Jeremy on that? Okay, Bethany?
I was gonna say that I was leaning towards not including them even before I heard about that district, simply because, you know, they voted down a library in their district. It makes me feel like they would not be good. They wouldn't get us a yes vote.
You don't have as much of a children population there. You've got, some some seasonal folks up there. You also have a bit of a culture of, a little bit more, now this is me, a little bit more territorial, you know, and stuff on the projects up there. I think there's a variety of, in addition to just if they're doing their own project, which they are full steam ahead on this thing. I think there are some decent reasons to not include them, whether they're on the ballot or not.
So how much difference is there between the school district without zone 5, if I remember the zone number right, that was all of the up the mountain stuff, compared to the library boundary?
2.2 billion and 2.1 billion.
But I'm looking at
So it's
actual
$100 million.
boundaries in the map, boundaries.
Well, remember, the second option, does include Welch's, that little portion, that is in the library district, but also in the Welch's school territory zone. So it could be pretty similar.
So if you had the school district that took out that whole fringe area, which is zone 5 of the school district,
Very close to the library district.
I mean, we heard from a lot of folks that are in the school district when we close the pool. And so for me, I think it's easier sell to say, hey, these are the people most impacted, to have access to an aquatics center and to not be able to benefit people throughout that entire district, that would potentially go through the high school, within that school district, I think would be a missed opportunity.
On the other hand, I'm thinking.
And it
that
equalizes the cost.
If we included a small bit of the Welch's school district, how much is that gonna overwhelm the remainder of all of Sandy, all of Eagle Creek, and even Estacada, in terms of population voting against or for this district? So what's that mean? If we got a little bit of them in there and we split it off at the right, an easy angle, then
We also didn't include them in the survey.
we end up with, we did not conclude it?
We didn't include Welch's in the survey, they were not included.
No, we're-
Or they were, I guess, in
yeah,
the
full
trail,
trail.
in the school district, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
the-
sorry,
okay.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm with you, Stan, I think there's a culture up in the mountain that would be a negative for us and Bethany too. But I'm thinking if it's just a small piece, we'll probably overwhelm them.
But you also gotta remember, it goes back to my earlier point of why I so badly want a unanimous from this council, is I'm trying to avoid every hurdle in our way, because I do think that this, Sandy has a tendency to vote down issues, and we still have some of the school bond stuff lingering out there. So, I mean, we got positive survey results, but I'll remind everybody, I did the survey for Central Oregon Community College back in 2006. And the survey was like, go ahead, let's do a new school, and then the economy dropped out, and a variety of different things and factors changed, right? So it's just, these things are not easy, and I just want to avoid as much opposition groups as we can, and you are going to, we will have a pretty strong voiced opposition group who've already issued editorials against us.
You're thinking,
The rates.
you're thinking that the Welch's folks in mass would be very negative about it, even if
Yes.
they have a small piece?
Yeah, I think
And
they
that
would say,
tell the rest of the
Welch's,
voters,
I think
okay.
they would say, we're once again trying to do something ourselves, and Sandy's trying to push us in with them.
Even if it's a small piece.
And I don't know, Jeremy, you've lived here a long time, maybe you remember, there was a lot of pushback to Welch's joining the Oregon Trail School District when they went to the district.
Oh.
They wanted no part of it. And it's no different than when the school district talks about, making what they were calling for a little bit a super middle school at the old high school, current Cedar Ridge.
Oh,
Welch's
yeah,
wanted
remember
no
that.
part of it. They don't want their kids coming down here.
Mhm.
So they like, I really think they're just territorial about their area, they're entitled to be that way. I think it would be in our best interest to
They
let
just
them.
wanna use the pool though.
They
too.
wanna use
Which
the
is,
pool.
which is fine, they'll
That's
still be able
fine.
to use
They'll
the
get
pool.
charged.
Then,
Oh,
yeah.
higher
I was
rate.
wondering, like, when you really look at the amount of votes and the impact that that community may or may not have on the overall vote, but the contribution that it decreases. So if you just look at year one and year three, the 2.5 versus 3.5, we're talking 26 cents down to 19. And I mean, that actually is gonna impact a larger group of people within the Sandy area that is the core of the voters. And so it may be something just to take into consideration. It can spread the wealth a little bit more, and we may not have enough votes in some of those communities that may wanna be opposed to it to actually turn it down, so.
I don't know if this piece of information is helpful or not, but the service area, the service population that is served by the Midland Library is 5,700. I don't know how closely that matches up with the Welch's, area that we're discussing removing, but just kind of keep that number in mind based off of library district funding. It's 5,700 in the Midland area, so you can kind of give or take that number a little bit. That's how many people of the 23,000 in the Oregon Trail School District.
Right.
And I guess that's 23,000 voters in the Oregon Trail School District. This is 5,700.
That's 5,700.
Served, so it's probably only 2,000 voters.
That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, how many voters are you talking about?
Yeah,
And
and I
then
don't have that
you
readily
throw-
available,
you
but
throw costs
ballpark.
on
Oh, they got mouths though.
Yeah, they do.
And
Yeah.
fingers.
Like I said, they like their area.
You get costs on here as well too, and you start, you say, hey, we're excluding the Welch's area. And so we exclude the Welch's area, and now they have to pay full rate to come use the pool. And they're being excluded because of a handful of folks that don't wanna play in the sandbox. And say, hey, for 19 cents per thousand on your assessed value, for under $200 a year, you get a discounted rate. Or you're gonna pay full price, and full price is probably gonna be a bunch steeper And it may be an opportunity for some conversation to just go, which option do you want? Because I think those 5,700 people would probably rather pay less to come down and use the pool, and benefit from the resources as a whole.
It is hard to survey the audiences of 2,000 people though. It's because remember, you gotta find the sample size and you
You're
make a
almost-
response rate.
You're almost at 100% if you do that.
Yeah, right, that's what I mean. It's, and then, so it's tough to get accurate
It's
feedback.
gonna cost these guys a lot of money, a lot of
Yeah.
time.
What's the project they're undertaking or seeking to do?
It's just a
Par-
park.
A park.
So that's what I'm wondering
Yeah.
though,
Yeah.
if we are not, if we go the direction of not including parks, will they still have,
It's aquatics recreation district,
if
not
it's just
parks.
aquatics recreation, not parks, it technically wouldn't overlap with their project then?
You know, we didn't get that far.
Okay.
Their project is not monumental, it's a piece of land. the
Right, it's one
county
piece
is
of land.
giving them.
They agreed. They feel, right, they feel very monumental.
Yes,
That's-
which, yeah, I mean, if that's fair, they
And
worked
if
very
they
hard
put
on
2
it.
years
Probably
into,
in the
into
past
trying to get
because
this
it'll
on the
cost so
ballot, I
much
mean,
to
that's.
vote.
An out-of-district rate could be a buy-in rate, you know, for a membership at the pool or rec center that, you know, is equal to what an in-district person pays in taxes or something.
Sure.
right?
Oh, sure.
When you
And
get that limit.
that'd be up to the board, you know, the district to determine what they want to do with
So
that.
on that conversation, Jordan, why don't we reach out to those folks? I'd volunteer if anyone wants to join, and why don't we could show up to their next meeting, ask for a spot on their next meeting, and
I'll go with you if it's a day.
let's have a conversation. Anybody else wanna be part of you? Okay.
I'll go if I'm not working,
Okay.
so.
I'm trying to say no. I'm really trying to say no.
That's fine. Yeah.
It's the women's
But
club,
you
right?
have to
Yeah.
watch out for
Yes.
who you learn.
Wait, is that what?
It's the women's club, right?
Well, if there's, if,
Oh.
yeah.
Am I allowed to go? I don't know.
We'll let you talk, don't worry.
So that was, the boundary's the easy question.
So, do you feel like you have direction there?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're still looking at, you know, after these conversations with them, it sounds like there's still possibly an opening for the whole Oregon Trail, but, we'll bring back,
Well-
revise those 3 options.
Well, hold on, everybody, I'm looking at it, so he just said there's a chance for a full Oregon Trail, right? So how did that hit you?
A little bit tough.
I still wanna not do all this.
I don't either.
Yeah.
And then why are you going to
So
talk
are
to
we,
them?
well, that's why
Whatever it was,
Yeah.
you're gonna talk to them about it,
Yeah.
was to.
Well,
Because
because it sounds
I-
like some
that's
people
why I
still
said-
do wanna include.
Because I have no problem if this group wants to.
That's
look
why I
to
asked that
include-
question, but-
Looks to include Welch's, I have no problem going and trying to sell that or talking to them.
But I just
So
saw.
how strongly do you
But
want?
I
Me
just saw a
personally.
majority go,
Yeah.
So I'm gonna assume right now that we don't want to, so if you're one of those that want to, is there anybody that wants to?
I guess I'd be more inclined to having library district, which ends up going into a piece of that, as more than the entire, for some of the things that, Lori spoke about, but, it just makes a natural boundary for ease of other things, but I'd rather go in that direction than maybe another direction that we're bringing up later.
So knowing that while, I think if we had a larger timeline, we could really explore that,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm headed.
How do people feel about making that decision tonight?
I can make that decision tonight.
I think I could too.
Super fast question. Of course I say that now. Say down the road, the district's formed, this happens, they wanna change their boundaries, they wanna incorporate Welch's. How hard is that?
It's basically, going through a smaller version of the same process you're going through now.
Okay. Very
So
good.
you could, you know, either do it by petition, they
Right.
go through the vote.
Sure.
You know, or it would be through the county.
Right, so if down the road,
It's possible.
they're excluded now, they decide they want in,
Yeah, the whole district would vote on it.
sure,
Right, so,
okay.
I wouldn't say it's just, you know, no big deal, but
Right.
it's possible.
Okay, the whole district would do it, cause this happened to the library district, because we had certain cities and certain areas when the library district was formed, that wasn't part of it, Damascus was one of them, and others, that then when they realized, oh crud, I have to pay to use the library now? Wait, we didn't know all this, and then they came back and were added to the library district, and they voted themselves in. They ended up having to pay,
I think
but the
that
whole
might-
library
Yeah.
district didn't have to go out and vote again.
When that was all happening, there were a number of IGAs that determined who was gonna be in and out at first. I think the district boundary itself might have included them initially. And through agreements, they said basically, I'm not positive, but my sense is that ultimately if you decide, okay, well, we're gonna make this district larger, you know, that has an impact obviously on existing.
So, let me ask the question this way. If we provide staff direction to leave Welch's behind, and we move forward with that decision, is there anybody that's going to be so upset by that decision that they see themselves not being able to support the rest of our efforts moving forward?
Leaving Welch's behind?
Yeah, but the reason we're doing that's not because we don't think it's valid and wanna, and wish we could think more about it, but we are all kind of recognizing that we're on an enhanced timeline here.
And we don't wanna compete with our district.
Yeah.
Let's not fight battles.
The only problem is they were.
Okay, I just, yeah. But,
I don't want
okay.
anybody feeling they're left behind, just.
Yeah, I understand, yeah, I don't mean it like that.
I know you didn't, I just was like, I just wanna make sure the optics are up and it's like, it's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
I see lots of convincing people that made a mistake over here and all that kind of stuff, so.
So then,
Like I
okay,
said.
so I'm going to assume we're good there, and then the next question is when we think about that boundary into boring, you know, while a perfect world allows us to cut us off of the metro boundary, it also doesn't encompass that much of the folks in boring in that. Do we wanna cut at the metro boundary, or do we just wanna keep the existing border that's already there in the Sandy Library District? What are feelings on that?
Would cut out Metro, just because they have advantage of a lot of other tax dollars.
It makes it clean, it may not make it clean as far as having to change the boundary, that's the complicated part. As far as messaging goes, it makes it clean to say that we're leaving the metro, sorry, Jeremy.
Oh, I have no problems with
it.
it.
Oh, so it's okay.
Use the worst optics you want.
But that's an established boundary, so you could easily
Yeah.
choose between those two.
Okay,
Going back a few years when I first got on council, there was a fairly significant argument between the boring people and the Sandy people about authority, Sandy doing things that influenced and cost their perception, them things about this reserve and all. And I suspect that the same people are there. And
so
I
I've had
suspect-
conversations with those people. Those
About
people,
base?
yeah,
Okay.
those individuals asked me specifically, they said we could support you
They
if you
could?
cut it at the metro boundary.
Oh, okay. My guess is that would be true too, from my viewpoint. That turned out to be.
It's a little bit different topic than what they were.
Right,
having
but
to-
it's still,
I
there was a.
totally,
Understand.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Right, metro boundary on that way.
Okay.
So, I know that in your article you said it wouldn't go farther north than the Sandy River. This actually takes it.
I was saying vaguely, we're moving in that direction, but I mean, you know, that was just to give, I feel pretty comfortable actually with that article considering where we're landing,
I just,
to be honest.
just wanted to make sure that, there was the understanding that that does go above there, it does go farther east than, for River Road. Quite a
Oh,
bit
sure,
farther than
sure,
River Road,
but it
actually.
does not go into the other effort.
No.
No, but it does go farther, way farther past River Road.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of a landmark that direction, to be
Yeah.
honest.
We're not go very far above the river, are we? I mean, I'm trying to figure out where the river is there, but little small piece.
Yeah, it goes into the run area.
Over.
Pretty-
Yeah,
pretty
I'll
small.
need to get better at describing the boundary, yeah.
It's okay.
So, I don't think did you just say that you don't think anybody reads my columns, Lori? Can we just all pause there for a second? That was-
Really?
You read it?
Definitely
That
read
wasn't
that
what I
one.
was gonna say, it was gonna be a much broader statement than that, but, yeah, I refrained.
I fell asleep after page 8.
No, I think no, I had no idea you had a column. Thank you. I love it.
I was gonna say, I don't know how many people
Views,
read the
4.
paper.
Yeah,
I was gonna say-
I know now, I'm gonna read it every month.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
All right, let's get into the hard stuff now. What is this district? And particularly, you know, giving us direction on, is this gonna be beyond a recreation district? Is it gonna include parks, and then moving that question then
even in the recreation, like I said earlier, we included about 10%, but, you know, one of my, you know, questions in this process is, you know, we haven't really had the time or, the ability to kind of think broader about a recreational, like, master plan about what maybe our citizens would want or whatever. Some of that is gonna start coming out of the parks plan process, in fact, some of the stakeholder interviews and things, so we can get some good nuggets out of that we can feed into the new district. So, timing wise, if we're asking the county to initiate it, that buys us a little more time too, to kind of gather that, supporting evidence. But it's just something to be aware of as we kind of like talk about budgets and costs, that, we're really, you know, even down here with the Sandy Parks, we're talking about current level of service, right? And my expectation is if you did start moving in the direction of a parks district, that, you know, having more than just 2 people maintain a much larger district is probably a wise idea. And so we want to think about those costs and increasing, you know, their staffing so that they can appropriately maintain those parks. The other caution about the parks district, and, you know, sorry, I probably have brought this up before too, is it does add another layer of complexity in terms of capital and locating future parks and things like that. I think with recreation and aquatics, people kind of generally know, you know, what that is. We have a whole, you know, pamphlet of what City of Sandy currently provides, and that can be expanded on in terms of recreation. But for parks, you know, you're probably, depending on, again, on that boundary, but even with this kind of narrowed down boundaries they have now, there might be questions about, are there county parks out there? I've had initial conversations with the county about county parks and whether they would be interested in, you know, having this district take them. But, you know, those organizations, those CPOs might have their own master plans or conceptual plans for where they would like parks. And that affects the budget and projections on, is there more debt service, or is that just gonna be up to the district to try to pass a bond to build those? But you're gonna have more of that, hey, what's in it for me sort of thing when it comes to, you know, having a parks district that includes, you know, a boundary beyond Sandy, right? And I think we've kind of talked about some of those things.
As someone who's made the rounds to some of the CPOs, I'm not seeing very many master planning efforts. So, just,
Or maybe
And,
they're-
and wouldn't you like $3.3 million in your budget that you don't have to pay for parks? Wouldn't you like that money? I mean, we could get rid of the public safety fee, right?
We can afford to fix up the bunker bill.
We could afford, I mean, so, there's some wins there.
There's a lot, there's wins all the way
Chief's
around.
going, I need 4 more police
There's
officers.
a-
Before you remove that.
Or a parks ranger.
And I think the difficulty, just to piggyback off of Tony, with
Didn't
parks is that
volunteer.
we don't charge to use
You can be
parks
my
now really,
AD
right? Like,
secretary.
are we gonna have a gate around every park and have someone monitoring them to charge people to come in and use those parks? So to vote for, yes, I wanna pay more for the parks that I can already access at no cost to me is gonna be a difficult sell, I think, for you or the district or
Yeah.
You gotta build new ones.
You gotta build new ones.
Upgrade stuff,
Yeah.
and you're gonna,
In this budget, the only assumption for parks that I made was that, you know, in this scenario, that the district does take on parks, we would retain ownership of the house within Forest Park, because that's a pretty solid revenue stream.
That we take,
That we would retain ownership of the house that's up, in Warrenstead
Oh,
Park.
the house.
The house that's up there, and you know, that's rented out currently, I don't know how long that
Mayor's
is
Mansion?
for. And it's a, you know,
We've been
about
working
$2,000
on
a month in revenue that we get from that, so I made the assumption we could keep that, and that would just move over to the Alpha and
Our
the
new
rest of
child
the parks
parks
would be
center.
what they are.
Yeah, right?
senior center.
And I know the last meeting we had a conversation too about
Yeah,
this.
I actually didn't think that was a joke, that's a really good suggestion.
It's a great suggestion.
It's not a joke.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is that kitchen in it?
yeah, absolutely.
The recreation center, or the recreation district could also have, you know, future ball fields and things that they actually run their own facilities that, you know, even though it may not be called a parks district, they have a, you know, recreational facility that essentially is a park that has a lot of programming like tournaments and leagues and stuff like that that can be constructed. So where's council leaning on sort of the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
scope
right, that was
of
kind
this?
of the hot button from the last time. You know, just to recap some of the conversations for the points that we need to coalesce around is, there's Sandy Community Campus, right? That includes all the acreage around there and where the school sits and where the possible community center would sit, as along with the aquatic center, and then we have our community parks. Some of the topics I remember us covering is who's going to continue to have the ownership of the parks, if the district or the city. If we, there was also conversation that if we did do parks, all the parks in the district, would a park like a mining park be maybe set aside as more of a Sandy deal, considering our Sandy Mountain Festival, our traditions in there, our concerts and movies in the park, the programming we do there, it's the mayor's dreams of having holidays in the park, all those kinds of things. The other conversation is who would operate the community center? Would that be the city, that we would maintain that, or would that be a facility that we would donate to the district? And then, of course, the land all surrounding the community campus, is that gonna be part of the district or something that the city holds on to?
I thought we pretty much decided we didn't wanna give away the building itself.
That were the feelings that I took as well, is that I felt a consensus that we were excited about the bunker building as a future community center that we would want to maintain control of as a city. I also felt a lot of people leaning towards keeping Mining Park within the city. And the conversations then started to land to what we wanted to do with our currently owned city parks and trails, and who would be maintaining those, as well as the land around the community campus was talked about as well, what we want to do with that. Anybody want to go first?
Well, I was one of those who resisted last time, so I had a chance to think it through. I'm a think through kind of guy, so give me a couple of hours, maybe a day or two. And I'm actually really changing my thoughts in that the scenario you just described, Stan, was probably pretty close to what I'm thinking. Mining Park, House in Bornstead, bunker building. I don't know what else I would hold back on. I like the idea of, was it $3 million for fixing up Mining Park?
3.3, Carl.
There's a lot of things I'd like to do in Mining Park if I had that kind of money. But.
Build a whole new city in it.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I would agree with you. That's kind of where I sit as well.
Yes, I would agree with that as well. I think if we had mining park and we didn't have to maintain the other parks, we could do a lot with mining and the bunker building.
One thing I'd like to ask, we're talking about putting pretty substantial pipe down the center of Sandy River Park. Any issues in that if we gave the park to the district? Would we have any administrative issues? I'm not thinking of any at the moment, but.
Let's just secure an easement before.
That's a good question.
I guess the one thing I'd want clarification on is just, the idea would be that we're talking ownership of these other facilities, take mining out, bunker building out. What was the third?
House on Bornstead.
House.
on board.
House on Bornstead. That would be something that the city of Sandy retains.
Yes.
Right.
Owns and then maintains.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. And then what's left would be, given to the district.
Right.
Okay. I think it's gonna be the same issues that come up. That's a little more unique, just given, its location, and I think Jordan's right. There would probably wanna be some reservation of some sort. That would all need to be worked through, there's no doubt about that. And probably part of what, and this is where and I don't mean to skip ahead, the difference between it being a petition, petitioners would propose, there would be signatures, and if the county takes it and runs.
Well, let me ask you this. Why could, we sit here just adjacent to Mining Park. Could our council, in pretty fast order, redraw our boundary of our ownership lines and include Mining Park as the same tax lot as City Hall?
Oh, I think.
And reclassify it as a non-park, but instead of a community meeting space, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Is there
no,
legal ways to get around it?
I don't think I think it's fine. I don't think you need to get that creative.
Okay.
I think it's just more a matter of being clear in what is being presented to the voters.
Gotcha.
That, the creation of this district, right?
Will include all the parks.
Will include,
Yeah.
you know, ownership, maintenance responsibilities of these parks, with the exception of.
The mining park
Yeah.
is just a very special part of
Right,
this.
and that's fine, it's just more a matter of how that's gonna be, you know.
Worded, right, all the,
So how about some of this other little, I wouldn't call it too little, but administrative things, for example, the pipe through Sandy River Park. There's probably some other, legal things that we probably want to retain if we think about it. How would that be incorporated in this district? Can we do it now? Do we have to do it now, or can we wait till after districts voted in, and then we could negotiate? What's the process or something like that?
I wanna give that kind of detail some more thought, whether it would be something that you can include now as part of what the voters would be weighing in on. More often than not, there's gonna be a slew of things that come after, that the district board and the city council, both entities would be working through via intergovernmental agreements,
Right.
IGAs.
Yeah, I'm gonna stand too. I think that a number of people around this corner are probably gonna be on that board.
Yeah.
So I suspect that there'll be some desire to make sure that works.
Well, wouldn't you only have to maintain an easement for the pipe?
I'm not sure what it would take, but certainly we'd wanna recognize that that's
Those
not
are-
as important for us.
Those are the things that I think as we kind of arrive at maybe, you know, bigger picture issues, you know, what would those things be? I was asking only because I wanted to have in my own head, like, what's your intent? We would, once we kind of drill down on that, we'd make sure we're covering some of those types of issues. It probably would just be an easement, that's research.
I just wanna pause. You know, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the two of you. Seriously, and so you weren't here at our last meeting. Jeremy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you were one of those that had some real reservations about the parks and stuff. Gosh knows you've served your time in this community, and you've been on that parks committee and stuff. So before we, get really moving, I just wanna pause, and I'd like to hear from the two of you.
So as I mentioned last time, I have huge reservation in, as a city, as an asset, just relinquishing an asset that the city has either put in the general fund, lots of money into acquiring parks, or their SDCs, and what that looks like, depending on where our boundaries go, and what we see as parks through other cities, communities like Estacada, and other places too, and, how our policies for SDCs relate to theirs, and how that gives into this, where that goes. In some of the desires as a, part of the planning that we've already had in place as a city, for some of these things, and the work we've done, because of some of the areas we have the ability to do that while planning for Tickle Creek Trail, for instance, and acquiring land and those type of things, can be more easily done with a city and how it is developed to make sure that that happens, or when it becomes available to purchase, put that in place to, hand some of those over. I know you guys have talked about Mining Park in one of them. So in that process, I've done a lot of thinking since the last meeting as well. Which then Tyler said something that changed my mind on a lot of things.
Tyler? No, I'm joking. Sorry.
But I think, I'll bring back up, because I think it's a very valid and big point that we really need to wrestle on that aspect of things too. And is that if we start keeping a couple of these parks, there's a lot of emotion with Manning Park, don't get me wrong, I have my own emotions with it, right? And I also have my own emotions with some other parks. John's Review Point, I mean, holy crud, does the city really wanna get rid of, the number one tourist best thing in the Northwest as part of being able to have it, changed as an economic tourist thing? Anyway, that being said, you have to keep all this equipment to keep up Manning Park. You still have to keep people on staff, and yes, it may not be mowing as many fields out there and these type of things out there, but it does have a huge impact, or you still have to keep that equipment around, that makes you neat. One of the things that Tyler did say, on that was when people are looking at something and they're voting for something you add, and you get all these parks, and these parks are going into it, I already got them for free. Why would I want that part of it, right? And so they may, I know there's been a huge desire from our community, from all over, that's what we heard, and that's what brought this whole thing up, is just the aquatics aspect of it and recreation. We know there's a huge And as it was brought up earlier, is they can have, a recreation department can buy a piece of land, build gymnasiums and those type of things on them, and that's necessarily in the park. They can also dilute them down as a group, having to maintain all these parks. I know one of the reasons why, a lot of people are like, hey, we need to take the money that we're not maintaining our parks and put that back in the general fund, but I think it's, that can get a little bit,
It's not that clean.
it's not that clean. And so, in that, we want them to be successful, we don't want them in 3 years from now being very unsuccessful because they've taken on too much responsibility around the area. When we talk about these other areas adding in, even when we talk about big parks all out of that whole feature, you just do recreation and aquatics, I think the mountain has a better desire for it than they do probably with parks. And I think that's what the people are trying to get, is just that one parks. Because one, they're kinda already using recreation, or saying, recreation department, I know for basketball and soccer, and all these other events that go on through there, football and everything else. And we hear that, I hear that all the time, it's like, hey, we just got an email from our basketball saying we don't have enough gyms, right? And so, fields to play on, so, and they could focus on gymnasium like we said. Anyways, that kind of going back to my thing of, do we want to keep ones and choosy, because there's gonna be still stuff that we have to maintain, even with a mighty park today. And then, so, is it all or nothing? I think you brought up a great point in that easement. What does that look like, the building down there, and some of those things? We brought that into the city limits so we would have more control over it. It's still in the city limits. And so we go through our planning and stuff versus the county's planning, so, but.
And you can take the equipment and staff and lease some to them, keep some here, or vice versa. They could have it, lease it to us. So the equipment really gets full use by both parties.
And I think just the last point I had brought up was just the example of North Bacchus Parks with Happy Valley and the struggle that they've gone on through the last 2 years with, and that's different than
The
this.
legislature is fixing it this month.
Oh, are they? I haven't heard.
Supposedly,
There's a
they were going to
bill.
last
There's a
session
bill.
too.
He's gonna get involved in the parks?
Oh, yeah, but it's a good fix.
I haven't heard of that, but I just have heard for the last 2-3 years of the fight that has gone on by 2 different governmental agencies.
It's been in the back of my mind.
And so that worries me for, what our community, and when I say our community, more than just Sandy, but the bigger community, whatever happens with creating this district, of how that gets burdened on there, and so adding more politics in it from other resources that are looking at it, so anyways, John, you.
Yeah, I don't have anything too wise to say, but what I would say is that, I guess there is sentimental component to the areas that we are talking about. And it's almost feeling like there's an assumption that if we don't hold on to it, the Parks Board or Park District may not care about it as much as we do. And I just think that
Right.
they're gonna
That's
be
a false
us.
assumption.
I mean, it's
Right.
us.
Yep. Right.
And
Yep.
I think the reality is say 10 years down the road, none of us are at the table, and the new council comes in and makes a decision that's completely the opposite of what we ever did, and that's a possibility. And I don't know that this saves or prevents any of that future from happening or not happening. But I guess kind of to Jan's point, and I think Jeremy mentioned this as well too, there's costs that the city will incur if we maintain these properties, and I think what I don't wanna do is not be able to keep up with the district. So if the district is doing some new really cool stuff, and then we got these parks that we don't have enough money to actually update, and we're just doing the maintenance. And like, everybody else is doing some real cool stuff, and then the city's doing these ones that are kinda like, yeah, I mean, that's my concern, is that the money that we have as a city, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, it offsets for a little while, but that will run out over time, and then the expectation may be that we're doing more, and it may not look good on us. But, I mean, I think there's value in keeping some of the properties. I mean, the rental house, obviously there's some rental income from
Maybe
that.
those as facilities, maybe, so you
It's,
can clean.
yeah, and then, I mean, also, like, I think there's opportunity with Mining Park as well too, just cause they're close proximity to City Hall, that we may have an opportunity there, but outside the bunch on the city's dime, it may be just more beneficial to maximize the resource through the district.
So, a couple of things I jotted down on this, then I'll go to Jordan, is, was kind of to John's point, is one is on the John Drew viewpoint. No, I absolutely don't wanna lose that, but we also don't lose that. I mean, it doesn't pick up and leave, right? It's just a different, it's just a different governing board. The other thing I did wanna reference was kind of a lesson I took from Ben at Redmond when we were there during the League Board of Cities, which is, if you remember that one of the first things they talked about was the confusion in their community about, is it city parks, is it the Parks and Rec parks? And kind of what they, I don't know if we asked it or not, but it felt like we asked, if you were to do anything different, what would you do? And the answer kind of was, add more clarity that it's just the parks are ran by. So there was not this, cause then people would show up and have to pay one fee deal or something. Well, no, sorry, this is a city park, and oh, this is a district. It just got, I remember them really spending time with us talking about that was confusing. But a big takeaway is, I think we should all pause and think about is are we giving this board too much to cover? I thought that was an interesting point, cause they will have parks, they will have recreation, they will have aquatics, but those are all kind of in the same wheelhouse as well, right? That's something to think about. Okay.
Can you make a pass-through on some of the resources? So like if we did aquatics, rec, and park district, and the aquatics piece was just a pass-through to the city where the board actually just passed through funding a resource to the city for maintenance and operations of the pool? Or do they have to have full oversight of every single dollar and operational oversight, like contract with the city for operations?
And vice versa. They would have the ability to, with some limits.
Cause they can lease,
You couldn't.
I mean, they could lease staff for.
For the way, but as you describe that, sure, they could contract with the city and say, okay, figure out what we're gonna do with, we'll have you essentially run X or Y, or maintain X or Y. And we will fund that through our tax revenue, yeah. I mean, there are limits to that, like certain things that they can't organically do themselves, they couldn't have the city do, but obviously, recreation center would be different for going forward.
Yep.
Since we're asking a few specific questions, I don't wanna say big picture, I don't wanna get details, but I'm just wondering, as we develop more and more housing developments, we're gonna probably put more parks into the list. How does that work with the district? Would we always have that for city, or would we have the option to throw those in, or is that kind of a conversation that we'd have with the district?
There's two ways to handle it. One is that, you'd either have the conversation with the district once it's formed, right? Or that could be, again, part of
The write-up.
the measure
Right.
itself.
So we just add those.
Yeah, and
parts.
remembering that, inevitably, the more complicated or more involved or intricate you make something that people are gonna vote on, the party tells us very, very clearly that gets more likely to be voted down.
But it also tells us that the ballot title is very important.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, but I mean, even for, and you have limits on what you can do there, right? So, but your measure itself, even if it gets into more of, okay, there's gonna be this moving piece and this moving piece and this moving piece, even if that's not obvious to the voter, when they're looking at it, that's something that easily becomes part of the narrative, especially in this day and age.
I think to that point, in Stan's point, it gets confusing if we start having some exclusions or some additions. And I mean, realistically, like, those of you who've been on council for a while, how many times have I had people come and complain to us about the school district?
Well, last
Or
night.
I mean,
The
yeah,
fire
you guys
district.
are really screwing stuff up with the school district, and we're like, hey, just heads up.
Oh, by the way, here's
Because
the-
it's not us.
here's
And
the
then
number
fire
for-
district's number two, they
Yeah.
never complain about the police, so good job, chief. But I mean, I think the less confusing we can make it, the better.
That's why, having a boundary that's pretty familiar, the average voter's gonna look at something like this and say, oh, it's either just the pool and the recreation piece, I get that. I think the more you start sort of slicing and dicing something like parks, the harder that's.
So let's have a conversation about mining then. how's everybody feeling about, to John's point, it's kind of a point that came up a couple times last time too, which is funny that you mentioned it, which is, these are our people.
They are, yep.
Right? We do have a tendency to talk about it as an opposition board.
Yeah.
Which they are not.
And they probably have even more interest, cause that's their main.
Yeah. They don't wanna do this stuff, they wanna do the parks.
Well, that's,
and
what- you missed that, Carl and I were saying, that board's the fun board to be
Yeah.
on.
Right.
They're not
Like the
doing
Arts
wastewater.
Commission, you don't have people that hate arts on the arts commission.
Right.
Well, I don't know everybody personally.
They do not hate art.
Yeah.
They
They
like
like
it. They like it.
I have a question about this, actually. So, a district board would form. What if we can't fill it with enough seats?
I mean, and that's a good point. And honestly, like, one of the ways of the petition process, if we, have the time to like have the grassroots effort, is you kind of naturally find people that will
Want
fill
it.
those positions.
Yeah.
Usually the chief petitioners are the people that are pushing this become,
Right.
also submit their names, and which has to be done in the next couple months, right?
Right.
Like, the county needs to know who's filing, by the
So,
summer.
so to Jordan's point, a lot of we're kind of the chief petitioners.
Mhm.
Not that we should all run for these board spots, but my point is that it's kind of on us to go find some of these folks and to galvanize that, this board, get it out there and get these people that want to apply. We're gonna have to do a little candidate recruitment.
And the initial, so again, either way this goes, cause there's gonna be a permanent tax rate.
Mm-hmm.
The county will be forwarding a question, to the voters for election, and as part of that, I need to I look much more at the angle of a, traditional petition submission, signature gathering piece. At that election, at that question for the measure, there can also be a concurrent question. I think when the county does it, there has to be, positive, to make the first election of board members. So it could happen concurrently. Now,
Concurrently.
who's running for it, yeah, that's
Yeah.
different, but.
You couldn't do it at the next election, because you're not getting money for a whole year. You could've just
Well,
formed and then say the May ballot,
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's the, I wanna get that piece clarified, but the district will be formed and will be a thing, right?
But-
Even if it's not collecting tax revenue for a year.
That-
We'll go to hire staff.
That
or
said,
anything
though,
like that.
if all of Jill's friends are voting for Jill to be on the board, they're probably also voting for the creation of the district.
Yes.
So it also, I see those
Going to
things going pretty hand in glove together.
So in
Interesting.
Bend, for example, they have highly competitive elections.
Right.
For the park board.
Right.
Oh, I bet. I
But
bet.
both those groups are gonna want the creation of the district.
Yeah.
Just a couple things to throw out, in this chart, I'm looking in the 2 to 2.5 with the boundaries, right? And so with a full, aquatics, recreation, or extended parks, you're looking over $1 per thousand. Do the math on what that means on a, basis for someone's taxes.
And flip to the next page.
So let's talk about what that means.
Yeah.
Let's go to the page and see what what was this built off of? This is off of dollars.
This is off of,
And would that be like a $400,000 house maybe?
That'd be a $210,000 house.
I mean, if
With
the
market
assessed
value.
value is
With
Assessed value, not
Right.
market value.
So market value would be like
Yeah,
400.
just
Yes,
Zillow
yeah.
your house and it
Yeah.
has your assessed value.
Yeah.
Do this.
so there's that question, and then, I don't, and Stan,
Oh,
you're
the
doing all
school
this.
bond funds are not paying for the sewer. Why did you make me look at my phone? It's like, jeez. Okay.
But I thought property taxes paid for it.
Okay.
There is still the outstanding question about when this district is created, what happens to the city's taxes and the city's revenue, right? And the reason I bring this up is, I heard the comments about maintenance and parks maintenance, and, one thing to consider is, right, you're shifting recreation over to the district, which will free up at least $250,000, which can then be put towards parks maintenance
Yeah.
within the city, right? We can double our parks maintenance. And I bring that up too, because as a city, we do a lot of maintenance. We have a public works yard, we have an operations center, we have the crews. And if we can just then forget about recreation, just focus on maintenance,
Yeah.
and, have more funds to do that, because now we have more, tax revenue, that's not going to other things. I just put that out
Yeah.
there as
Why?
It
Why you gotta be
includes
that way?
aquatics that we're not currently paying for,
Yeah.
includes Estacada Parks.
Right.
Includes multi-generational center that's not currently built,
Yeah.
so
Sure.
it's really like 1.3 million if all those things got
Yeah.
parceled off.
Such a.
I know,
Mine would
sorry,
be
so I wanna make sure we're not
$423.
No,
dreaming
that's,
too large.
that's what we wanted to know, that's right. So it says, I mean, we're, you know, it says
I
right
got
now,
Rolls Royce
283,000.
taste.
These two are over here working their tax rates.
Yeah, that's what they were, yeah, 283,000, and what was that last slide was based on 210,000
Yeah.
assessed value?
So it's pretty easy on the dollar one, so just add a
Right.
0.
Right.
So, mine would be $423 additional dollars a year. So you better build some pretty park districts.
Well, but that, again, a
This just
dollar.
doesn't feel like a lot of money.
They will, John,
I don't
they
know.
will.
I mean, a dollar wouldn't include
It is when
a
you're
lot of
paying
capital,
something.
right? I mean, in order to build parks or,
Every little
you know,
bit
expand
adds up.
parks, they would have to go out and pass a bond, or we set them up with an even higher permit rate so they have operating capital from the get-go. Cause they're not gonna be able to afford to do the bathrooms improvements either unless we give them the money to do it, right? They're gonna be in the same position we are, or they're gonna be going out to the
That's,
public for bonds.
that was another thought there is, you gotta be careful, not, you know, that value to have enough so that one doesn't overcome the other, so it's all aquatics, then does the parks, you know, get, you know, who's ever on the board just puts everything towards aquatics or rec and forget about the parks, because there isn't enough money as time goes on, or vice versa, right?
Well,
And
that's
to
why
be
we
able
wanna
to
make sure
have
we set that
a
rate, because-
healthy,
Yeah.
when you're doing recreation and parks, that's really
Yeah.
two different things, and, you know, making sure that there's enough money to be able.
Sure.
The other thing would be SDCs, for developments that coming in, and there's a lot of restrictions around SDCs, the city collects those SDCs. In other places, what happens, do they pass that on to the Parks and Rec district, because then they have requirements that they can only use it in certain ways, cause we got sued for using, money here in Mining Park, the development from, you know, from Bluff, back in the day, about 15 years ago.
Oh.
From 4J.
That was a leveraged lawsuit, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
But the point being is there's a lot of
Yeah.
those
So-
things, so when money passes through, it doesn't like wash it clean for them to do anything they want with
The
it.
big piece, in full disclosure, our firm represented Happy Valley in the Park District suit, so I didn't work that much on it, but I know a lot about kind of the facts that were in play there, and a lot of that did revolve around SDCs and what the city felt, you know, was collected relative to what the district spent, wasn't it, you know, equitable. Bottom line is that again, you know, with you're forming a district, you're creating a new local government. And what that district does and what it owns and, you know, is really gonna be set out by that initial, what people are voting on. You can get a broad authority, kind of narrow authority. There could be something that would say, like we were talking about, the city of Sandy will, you know, grant this district X, Y, and Z. But nothing necessarily happens other than you have a district now that can collect taxes in this amount and spend that money for these purposes. So things like SDCs.
Yeah.
Practically speaking, yes, there would be, I think, a lot of, at the very least, pressure and a expectation that the parks SDC that the city collects, at least some portion of that, not all of it, would be going towards.
That's right.
Wouldn't all of it though have to go there?
No, it wouldn't, well, it depends on if the city's maintaining some
Of the
level
park, right.
of.
Cause it only does for future expansion, not existing parks.
Yeah, the SDC might shrink, or another way to handle it would be that, yeah, we're gonna then take that SDC revenue and some, you know, substantial portion of it would be given to the district. If all that would be worked out, I would never recommend that you're trying to work all that out in advance. I mean, that's just a
Yeah.
recipe for people saying, this is not.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out, cause there could be another revenue stream for the district.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah,
The
I
whole
think there
context
is.
behind the
Yeah,
question of that
sure.
was,
Yeah.
when building happens, developments happen,
You have to justify
it has
how
to
that
be
money
used
is gonna be
for
spent. Yep.
parks, it can't be used for streets, it can't be used for this, it has to be used for that.
Right.
It has to be used for future expansion, it can't be using on existing, you know, stuff, it has to be for that. And when that gets put over there, they couldn't take that money and go use it in outside of the area that it's supposed to be used for, because that's the that would be put to them to give money to help expand on parks, or expand on trails, or expand on those things in the area that it was.
Yes,
bought
I think
from.
practically speaking, what would happen is you either keep the SDC as it is based on the assumed capital improvements that the SDC is being taken in for.
Yeah.
And some good portion of that is gonna now be the district's responsibility, so that money would flow to them. Or, you could say, well, since a lot of those projects now are gonna be under the authority of this district, we get to lower our SDC accordingly, because they could pass in their own SDC.
They could.
So, jumping back onto your initial question, a good 30 minutes ago. So, I mean, realistically, we're gonna do some more polling, and
Yeah,
so this
that's
is
right.
something we could easily understand the palette of, like, hey, if we just did aquatics, here's the district size we're proposing, it would be 26 cents per thousand, here's the average cost per person. If we wanna do recreation, here's what you get out of this, if we wanna do recreation and parks, here's what you get out of this, and here's how much it costs, to get a better feeling for where the voters may be.
Right.
Cause I think the voters are probably gonna be at that, I mean, they're gonna be just like me.
Yep.
I mean, I want that 19-cent one, cause I think that's the lowest one on the entire sheet. Right, but I want that bottom of the list. of
Yeah, you
dollars
want
per
that
cent
stuff.
value,
Yeah,
yeah. And so it's that, where's that
Where do they
breaking
land?
point for 'em?
A couple things. One is to Jeremy talking about SDCs. There's been some conversations about county SDCs for parks being available in this.
Oh, you mean that the county, Clackamas County would have
Yeah, they have,
SDCs?
yeah, that they currently goes to the county that could go into this.
Yeah, it depends on their methodology and how they spread it out, it's possible.
Right.
And then we're gonna ask them also to support.
Usually it's,
Well, I mean,
I
Maybe not
guess
like
it's possible,
that.
I mean,
Do you know what I'm talking about? You've been part of that. Don's talked about that. Or am I off base? Don's talked about Clackamas being able to collect SDCs.
I mean, maybe it's on behalf of the district or something.
Park
because-
District does.
Yeah.
Cause it would be on
Clackamas.
our boundaries,
Okay.
the city boundaries, so
Okay.
anything that's built outside of our boundaries is.
Has there been anything spent in our area by the county from SDCs? I'm trying to think, when was the last time? I've never heard of an SDC application on anything in this general area. Now, there may be some stuff, you know, in West County or something, I'm not aware of. Boy, East County,
So,
where would that come from?
Okay.
I'm trying to, you know, there may be, I can
That's
see the
fine.
rationale for it.
Yeah,
but-
I'm a new mayor, I don't know.
Jump to polling then, is that?
Well, one more thing. I mean, as someone who has sentimental value about mining, I'm okay, I think we should include it in the district. To John's point, and everyone else's point, I think it adds more clarity,
Sure.
and I think we've got to trust this future board. I mean, it's
absolutely.
our community members, it could be some of us, I mean.
Right, so then we're talking about keeping the Bornstead house.
Which is another
Facilities.
The
one.
Bornstead,
Facilities.
the Bornstead facilities,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then the bunker building.
Right.
Okay.
And the parking lot for the bunker.
Correct.
I'm in the point, I got this training in consensus voting. I'm in a place where I would disagree, but because of the good of the board, I would go with mining being in the district. But I suspect that there is a lot of, we all reflect what our constituents are.
Yep.
There's gonna be some people out there that say, oh, I don't wanna give away the control of mining park to a unknown board, and that may create some people saying, vote against it. So to me, there will be a large amount of explanation about what this means to people
So I don't-
who are out there.
I agree.
Yeah.
So I don't want to assume. You mind, let's go around.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, we'll start with you, Bethany.
I feel like I keep pivoting,
Yeah.
and I really want the phone survey to be clear in asking this question, and I do not feel like I can say for sure if we should include the parks.
You think maybe we include it in the survey?
I want to include it in the survey.
Okay.
I'm not completely sure that we will pass this district if we include it, but I think that's a question.
To the
we can-
points that Carl was mentioning, talking about.
Are you talking mining park or parks in general?
Parks in general.
Oh.
So you-
Oh, okay, thanks for asking
So
that.
that just means you're looking at.
You're looking at the tax
up
rates.
the list.
I'm looking at aquatics, recreation, rec.
Oh, so we need to include that, okay. But I guess where I'm going is just mining park specifically.
That adds confusion. I think if we're doing parks, we gotta do parks.
Okay.
Okay.
I
I'm gonna let Carl finish.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna let you,
No.
or I'm gonna come back to you.
No, let him finish, yeah.
No, I mean, I wanted him to have the last word since he
Oh.
started it out.
Yeah, no, so I.
You know what I mean, you get
Yeah.
last word, you get last word.
You get last word, Carl.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so to your point, yeah, I'm under the impression right now that we're gonna give tax options in this next survey, so, but yeah, I'm okay with that, I'm okay with, because I do agree, and, I've said to a few people this week that, you know, we have to trust the process, and, you know, this is, whether some of you guys are on this board, or other people are on this board, it's still a board of our peers, we're still a small community. I have to believe that people will want to do the right thing by being on that board, right? Is they're gonna want to do things for the betterment of the community and the program as a whole. So yeah, I'm fine with us maintaining those 2 facilities and including all of the parks in the district.
To that point, I would say, you know, I've gotten a lot done this year, and I keep meeting this holiday thing, you know, and I can't get much traction on it. And the reason I can't get much traction on it is because we're doing so much other things. And to Lori's point is if we have a Parks and Rec board, they may actually have the time to do something about it,
Yeah.
right? With a little leadership from us and cooperation and stuff, so I'm leaning that direction as well.
Nothing new that hasn't been said.
Yeah.
I think the reality is polling to see how deep people wanna go. And then I don't think we separate parks out of it, or we don't have our own parks. Just keep them all together.
Remember, we will have our meeting with the Parks Advisory Committee as well, so I mean, we wanna have a broad conversation with them on that
Yep.
decision. Yep, yeah.
Yeah, I would say the parks belong to the park district, and we have the 2 facilities,
Jeremy?
And the 2 facilities, I'm sorry, I stepped
the
out to use the
Bornstead
restroom.
Your
House
house.
and the Bunker House.
We've listed your house.
Hey, if you wanna mow my grass,
Yeah, we got it.
So the question is,
Well, we can collect rent out.
just, I'm not sure when you re-enter, the question is specific to mining.
Yeah, but, going back, what Bethany was saying there, and this is what I was trying to point out at the beginning, though, I think that this, mine would be, putting in there parks, so basically exactly what you said. I don't think we'll pass it if we add the parks in there, because it makes a lot of confusion in a lot of other areas. But if we are to do it, I would say they all go in there. And I'd even have to say, even getting, except for the building of the Space for Community Center on Pleasant Street right there, that piece of it, I think, has value in having that stay with the city. The building at Bornstead, I think, if we were gonna put them all in there, could be where the Parks and Recreation District's housed out of.
God damn it, I liked Jan's idea, and then
I like-
that's a
I
good
like-
idea
I like
too.
John's idea.
Right,
Yeah,
and
dang
it's
it.
to-
We only give the
Those are
contractor
good
during business
ideas.
hours, so,
Those are both
yeah.
good ideas. Those are both really good ideas.
So, because of the need and
That's good.
it actually has a plan, we can hand them the plan, it's supposed to have a parking lot, with the road, you know, all that
Sure.
piece of it, and it gets them off on the right foot for, especially, if we have the Leslie Nope room, but, thanks for laughing.
I love it.
Ron Swanson's office, but, I think that I would rather not try to mix it up. I think it's too complicated. When we add complication to anything we vote on, it just, like everyone has said, and we all know, people both know when they don't understand anything, so
Yeah.
we keep it simple. And that's why when I think we start adding parks, and then that will be on the further discussion we talk about is when we add like another city to this and what that brings into
Yeah.
the mix of voting yes or no. As
It's like the moratorium on marijuana sales, right? So I'm thinking how that whole thing gets worded.
What are we talking about
You
mining
support
park?
the ending of the moratorium.
No, but maybe that's a long-winded and.
But then the
These
other
are
one's real
selling
clear,
marijuana
tax.
in West Park.
No, the board said house.
Oh, sorry.
So I hate to do this to you, you're kind of losing a little bit. I worry, but what are you thinking, kind of after going around the room?
Yeah, I feel the same boat. I'll go mining park. If we put parks into it, let's put mining park in there. I just think that the questions have, and the statements have been that there's a lot of confusion, creates difficulty in approval. I think that including mining park into the rest of the park creates the same sort of concerns that we've expressed here. So if we do that, we need to explain that we think there'd be a lot of good things happening we'll be doing it anyway, even though there'll be an Estacada person, maybe, and maybe, people, I don't know, whatever else we might add to that committee into their mix, but we just need to explain it. So I would include Mining Park, we include all parks.
And I have to say, if anybody's got anyone that is like advocating, we don't wanna lose this, we can't lose this, that is like your number one person to suggest to go for
Right.
this board.
Mhm.
Oh,
Because you
yeah.
know that they're gonna have values
Yeah.
and are in
Absolutely.
alignment
Yep.
with keeping that park
Mhm.
and representing what
So
we're
true.
supporting as well
So
too.
true.
At that point, I know of 3 or 4 people, but at least one of them is for the parks or the aquatic only.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, I think
I know
so.
some just for the recreation,
Yeah.
and
only, they
would-
just want basketball courts.
If we just went
soccer.
aquatics, man, there, I can think of
Yep.
3 or 4 people. Actually, on the other side too, I can think of one person in the audience who probably make sure that we add parks too as well too. I see some confusion.
Can I ask a question about the bunker building?
What's
Huh?
that?
Can I ask a question about the bunker building?
Please do.
What is the council's vision on what we would use that for if it's not?
We gotta
be-
change it.
We so.
Well,
We do.
yeah,
We do. I agree.
I hate to
I
know
agree.
what they're talking
It's
about.
named after John Bunker. It's.
May I provide a little bit? I just cosmetically, you know, this happened when the girls were playing soccer and they were at practice, and it was in the fall, and I was able to walk around there, you know. I'm walking around the track and showing Lucy some of the stuff, and I look up, and that bunker building's like up on a hill right there, you know. And right at that same time was when Tractor Supply was being built. And, you know, you're driving through and you're like, what is that monstrosity as it's going up, right?
Agreed.
And then all of a sudden, and I'm not saying today it's the most beautiful building either, but I've driven by a lot of Tractor Supplies, and
It's
compared to
not an
those,
eyesore.
it ain't an eyesore, right? And, you know, and you think about what that bunker building looks like, it looks a lot like what that Tractor Supply was looking like as it was being built. And then, you know, they added whatever,
Some windows,
whatever
yeah.
people wanna say, right? They added the faux windows, they added the sandy style, the pitched roof, the cosmetics. And, you know, you start thinking about a day that you've got, youth sports and stuff and practices going on, beautiful ball fields, and then you've got our community meeting up with beautiful glass windows on top, and
Oh, yeah.
they're looking out onto the fields, you know, going on as they're meeting in a community space.
Amphitheater on the hillside.
Well, but just-
Rooftop bar.
But my
I mean,
point.
we're going back to the OPSIS days, cause I think a lot of us that were on council when OPSIS brought back their plans,
Yeah.
were like, that's what we see in that space, that's what we see in that
And,
facility.
right, but then they added on a lot of other things around it,
Yeah.
and I think OPSIS is a little bit full of baloney. And heck, I'll do a press release that says that, I think they're full of baloney. So to that point, Adjourn's had you know, numbers ran, but that's, anyways, I just wanted to give my kind of vision. Now, who's in there and what are they meeting about? Let's talk about that, you know, I don't
Yeah.
know, right? But I really like the idea of having just this really nice facility located near to our parks.
Yeah.
That brings the community together as the youth are out there playing. I think it sets up awesome. What are everybody else's visions
And
for
it would
that?
have a lot more purposes, it could be childcare classrooms, it could have interior rented spaces for, little
Classes
shops.
or
We hear that all the
Maybe
time
the
when
local
we're-
community college might even offer some classes.
Seriously,
Yeah.
seriously, yeah.
If you wanna know of what I think is a big win for this council, would be to do something that would open up some portion of that community, say that Cedar Ridge, whatever they.
The bunker.
The campus, you know.
Mhm.
I personally am an advocate of the gym, and I know that there's some issues about that, but putting something open so that we can
Yeah.
get somebody saying, wow, this is a good place, that we've got kids, we've got somebody in there that's really using the building. And I would think put some paint on some of those buildings, it would make a world of difference in terms of how people view those buildings. Right now, people are thinking, spend $3 million on it, and what do we got? We got a dead space in
Now,
there.
go ahead.
Well, and like we've been hearing, there's money and grants floating around for childcare if we have space for it, so.
So those are, we've talked a lot about vision, kind of them
That's
being
the
involved,
case.
so
Yeah.
let's
Well,
kind of.
I haven't spoke, so.
Well, that's. Jeremy, where do you think I was starting to go?
Well, if you haven't heard
right?
anti, I'll echo whatever you're about to say, cause I
You're
don't
not.
see the value in bringing
Okay.
them along, and I think it's way more confusing that we bring along Estacada, but we're not bringing along Welch's.
Because you're part of the school district and Estacada's not.
And I mean, we're the pass-through
Okay.
for the Welch's community, and their likelihood of using it, I'd say, is very similar to the likelihood of Estacada using it.
Can I-
So
can
just
I-
as odd that we
Can I
leave
just
it
say
out.
one thing to that, though, just to kind of play devil's advocate with you? If you're talking about the two communities, and I hear what you're saying, but I think we're going, or at least I'm going off of the expectation that Welch's doesn't wanna be involved in this, and Estacada does.
Yeah.
And that to me is the difference, right? I don't feel like we're leaving a group of people out. I feel that the information that we've ascertained is we have a group of people that don't want to be included versus a group of people who do want to be included.
So we have elected officials that do wanna be included.
And
We
a poll.
hope-
And a
And a
poll.
survey.
They
hope-
surveyed
we hope
too,
that-
yeah.
But we hope that they wanna go further down the list too.
You know?
Because I think the reality is income differences between here and Estacada are something to take into consideration as well too. And the tolerance to paying $1.10 versus paying 26 cents may be different as well too.
So I agree, and I echo John, we're, similar
They're really
pages.
strong where they're at.
So we're at,
Can be.
on that, and, you know, people who consider Sandy more home than not, but we'll, and I believe on the elected officials may want to go one direction. I know we have a poll, but, doesn't encompass everyone in that, and no
Right.
poll does.
Right.
But just to go off of some recent history, I just had to look up an article here because I know from the working with the schools, they've gone after school bonds here lately, and the people there have said no, and no, and no, on no new taxes.
Sure, they have.
And so that is the
But then the same with
feeling
fire.
around that, and I can tell you, their schools are in desperate need of a bond. And so a few years ago, they went out and lost, big time down. And then just last year, they were polled again, and here's an article I'm just reading on there, that it was 46% no, while 45 said yes. And there was in the pollsters, they mentioned that there was a very unique to those numbers, as it was very partisan on the issue of they will not. And that was for something in their own community, in their own
No, you're
backyard
right.
with their kids right there.
Yeah.
Not for something that they see sometimes. And I've got this feeling, because I work with a lot of people when working with the school district over there, teachers and the people there that live in that community, have a real, sometimes an issue with Sandy overshadowing.
Big brother.
Big
Right?
city folk.
In different ways.
City folk, that's what we are.
Right? It's really there. And so for them to pass what they feel like we would be building in Sandy, we would be building that, I think goes back to that whole of diluting it. I would be feeling more positive towards the Eagle Creek, because Eagle Creek's a big area though. More of those, depending on which side of the Eagle Creek, feeling like Sandy's home, we're not bad. And so, and use
Shop at
those.
Fred Meyer's.
Well, I think they all shop at Fred
That's
Meyer's.
okay, that's
Have
good.
you been to Fred Meyer's lately? But that's just, when you're trying to pass that, you also have to think of those type of dynamics.
Yeah.
And for what the value is that you may gain out of it, you may also really sink, that from that proposal on there. I do think that maybe some elected officials really, they don't find a way to do that in writing our coattails and getting this together to be able to do that. And I think there is a little of their own bias and one going on this, a lot of political.
Well, they love to
philosophy.
leverage us.
Not a lot of not political, but not a lot of, nothing to really lose
Sure.
in their case,
Sure, I
right?
hear you.
Of
Yeah.
those type of things. On the opposite side of things, which I know I said last time, was also, I think there's the feeling that we brought up that, hey, things here, we've been a lot of work that, you know, we don't see here that's going over there, that a lot of people from here do not go visit, the other valley, just, you know, it's Gresham Metro, not the cool.
George?
So, you know, as the council can watch this meeting too and get a sense of where the council, the Sandy City Council is sitting on this, but one way to maybe resolve this is include them in the voter poll,
Yeah.
right? You know, and say, hey, you know, we got the survey, we're working out some proposed boundaries, you know, would you be interested in taking the next step with us and seeing, you know, answering these questions? Is there, you know, sort of, you know, is there same level of interest in comparing those two different areas like we did with the other, survey.
Yeah.
If that were to come forward, I would say there would be specifically need to be stated in the poll and vice versa on those, so those. would
Well,
be-
I'm on this timeline thing. Guys. And I'm hearing that, there's not a lot of support in this room to include Estacada, as wonderful of a community as they are, as much as I respect their leaders and how reciprocal I think everything we're trying to do is. I wanna start drawing some boundaries and start, I mean, guys, I wanna get moving, so, I don't know about involving Estacada.
For the good of the group, I'd be fine giving them this.
Doing what?
You don't wanna
Yeah.
poll the second time with the survey?
Well, so with how much money we're going to get versus all the factors that Jeremy just kind of brought up, which I think are
They're valid,
They're
yeah.
incredibly valid, factors. To the point I think I made to you earlier is we surveyed them, we came back and some of our counselors quite frankly surprised me with the opinions, and I was kinda like, well, shoot, that was our opinion, why did we even survey them, right? And that's not to say offense to anybody on that, and it was always kinda like, let's just throw, you know. So, that said, I believe at this point, we should start maybe going down a path of, sit down and talking to them and everything else, but you know what, I think, we have a crunch timeline, we gotta make some really bold decisions.
And I think like David said earlier, when the question was asked about expanding, in the future, we could go through a similar process if we
Basically, just
see an
annexation,
opportunity.
just that district would be annexing property to a district.
Well, and honestly, like, people I talk to in Estacada, they just want a pool.
And they'll pay more to
They're gonna
access
pay more-
it.
They are going to Malala right now, so,
And they want a cool pool.
yeah.
I would wonder a little bit about Eagle Creek voters. I think we should
Yeah.
look at their voting in precincts in some of the last elections.
Sure.
Cause I think that they're more like Estacada.
I got those, so I'll do it tonight.
Okay, Jordan, you got all the clarity you need?
Yeah, I'm struggling here a little bit. I would go forward with the rest of the council in this way. I was just looking to see how many votes there was in Estacada last, presidential election, and there was 2,600 votes that were cast for their different, candidates and such, compared to, what's ours? 5,000 or something like that, so they're
More.
maybe half of us.
About
Yeah.
6,500.
6,500, okay, so they're about a third of what we would do, so there's a little bit of that negative thing we talked about, only on this time it's on the positive side. We have a group of elected officials and probably a fair amount of pull that says we want this to happen. But if there was a negative piece of work to work on this one, we probably overwhelm them to some degree with all the mixed emotions about who's in favor, who's not in favor. I'm for the confusion thing too. I think that we need to be simple. We got a short period of time to do. No matter how much I see the Estacada would be, I think a positive note for total package, it's gonna be confusing. Let's go simple.
Go simple.
Just go simple. Stay with
All right.
library.
Okay, library, Jordan.
Mike's-
We made another decision.
Yeah.
Not a decision, well, yeah.
Okay. All right, that helps. I think then, like I said, the next steps is talking to, having your meeting with the Parks Board, and that's, on Monday. I think it's gonna be really hard for us to pull we could probably get some refined maps, we could do that, but in terms of substantial, further data, it's gonna be hard in the next couple days to pull that together, but we'll refine, those boundaries, and so at least, have the next step on, where we're landing with those alternatives, and then I think, we need to schedule that work group, to get going on the polling, and maybe if we do have time on Monday, talking about those boundaries of, it sounds like we're sitting at $1.25 for that sort of district, concept, and given what those boundaries will be, and then, what other one will we test? And I think this is something maybe the work group can work over in a 2-hour meeting with the survey consultant saying, what is the right, testing 50 cents to $1 or?
What are council's feelings as mayor if I extend the feel like we wanna keep the work group exactly as is? Or, are we okay with providing latitude to invite maybe a Parks Advisory Board member to be part of that work group? And maybe reach out to the boring CPO and possibly Furwood if they wanna have a representative on it? Or do we wanna keep it focused on the group as is, that can really make some, you know, but I think my worry about broadening the group is too heavily, maybe just add someone from Parks, is that then we can really like focus in. But if we had too many that haven't been kind of privy to some of these conversations, then we might spend a lot of time catching up and explaining.
Yeah, I don't
Jordan,
have
what's been your
experience.
experience?
Yeah.
With going on second polling involving more people or not?
I think for consistency, and given, you know, the core group has been involved in, you know, part of the conversation.
Second.
Okay, but I would like to, appoint, I'll talk to the Parks Board members, but I would like to appoint a member from our Parks Advisory Committee to be a part of that group. I think that was a mistake last time, that I would like to course correct on.
I'm okay with that.
One person,
Yeah.
one Parks.
Okay.
That's one.
And you do have the opportunity too to involve them again once, you know, the questionnaire is developed with the work group and, you know, getting their input on that, too, so.
Okay.
Might be nice to have Dawn, who's actually gone through park organization.
I was thinking that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he'll be there on, Monday.
Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, if we can pull these things together, we're looking at, you know, obviously additional workshop meetings, and maybe we look at the February meetings. We have the third book, by the 18th. So I wanna talk a little bit about the timeline and the process and what we kind of learned with the petition process versus this county initiated formation process. So, you know, initially, most districts are formed under the petition process, right? It started through a friends group, or, you know, some citizens that get together that start the process and do the petition. You know, it's a little bit different here. We have the city government that is leading this effort, and this isn't always the case. This is actually sort of unique. And so the state law does allow for the county to put directly on the ballot through the county initiated formation process, as an option. And as David has talked about, you know, that the rules are a little bit different. They're not as prescribed, and there's a lot that, you know, the county then has control on, right? That we don't really know.
Not in the long term, the short term.
Short term, just in terms of getting it on the ballot, right? You have public hearings at the county level, opportunity for them to maybe talk about conditions that they would like to see, like have we kind of passed certain thresholds that they maybe have in their mind in terms of, you know, proof that this is needed, that, you know, there's value in this. And I think, like I said before, we've done surveys, we're gonna be doing polling, we have, you know, multiple surveys, you know, we have a lot of that background information already.
Offices, plans.
Right.
Well, but I'm just saying, there's been work.
We have work, yeah.
Okay.
But obviously, this process is a little more political than, you know, process in terms of, I mean, the petition's still political, but it is a little political in terms of, you know, getting the county board on board, hearing out their concerns, or we may have to have a meeting, you know, or attend a board meeting to explain what we're up to and why. And so it's a little bit of a different process, but the reason why, you know, we're going to buy into this is the information that we're getting from elections officials is that petitions take more than just a month, and we're looking at a deadline of April 24th to have petitions all signed and
About
done.
5,000.
It's not gonna happen.
Okay.
I mean, I'll just be straight with you.
It's not going, and me too.
So it's off the table.
Yeah, and
It is.
the examples
There's
are
no way you can do it.
Wilsonville's, there's a petition circulating for 6 months, and they need about 5,000.
It's off the-
Oswego
yeah.
is at 3 months, they still, and all of them are not done.
So we gotta go this county route.
County.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think one thing that might be good is if we have one of those workshops with county commissioners, at each of their meetings, they have little workshops on specific subjects. If we could arrange to all meet with them.
Good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
I have a question, and that would be really for you guys. Cause I haven't been to C4, thank goodness, for a few years. But I used to know the pulse of all the commissioners, right? You know where they were, knew where they stood, whether they liked us or not, or whether, you know, what angst there were. And I could tell you which ones would be going down one path and which ones would be opposing us, right?
Mhm.
So what is the feeling that you guys now?
I think we
fill
have
those
a
seats,
once
so-
in a generation opportunity.
Yeah, I
With the
work with
current-
most of the commissioners regularly, budget committee and politically.
So the reason I bring that up is because when going through the purchasing of the pool, changing the urban growth boundary, urban, I mean, not urban growth boundary, but urban, renewal district and stuff there, I heard personally from several of them, in fact, they voted down our, urban.
So think of the makeup
So,
today.
the makeup is different, but there's a couple, people on there that are the same, and, I know one of them was against both of those, so I just.
You're talking about Commissioner Salas?
Yeah.
So I would argue knowing, commissioners that were on the board at the time that are running now, that are no longer on there, that I've had conversations with. And I know commissioners that were opposed to it, that were on there before, that I've had conversations with. I feel like we have a very good opportunity to get this thing done.
With these
It's an
commissioners.
election year too, and they're gonna wanna look good.
Right.
That cuts both ways though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just, they wanna make sure it's something that's gonna pass.
Sure.
And so that's,
Yeah.
So that puts us on a burden of saying, here, we need
here's
to do our
why
job too.
it's a good idea.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and so that's why I'm leading to my next point, regardless of, this being not a petition process anymore, requirements of like, say, this economic feasibility statement and stuff like that still need to be done. Like, we need to go to the county and have those meetings and have a plan, or if, they're gonna have a lot of questions, and if we're not clear about here's, what we're looking at doing, the boundary, the tax rate, why we need it.
Keeping it simpler helps that out.
Exactly.
Yes. And so, going through this process, yes, we don't have that May deadline, but we have a July, end of June, July deadline, and it's still an aggressive, heavy lift.
Which is why we're rapidly,
Yeah,
moving
absolutely.
ahead.
So,
And
so
we're on
do
our
we
way.
need, so do we need to look at hiring some outside source to assist with this so that we get where we're going?
It kinda depends on kind of the information we might get from the county in terms of any type of conditions they might put on us with, the type of package they wanna see, if we wanna do more community outreach in that amount of time, maybe. But keep in mind, going out and hiring
I know.
takes
I
RFPs,
get it.
selection,
Yep.
contracting,
Yep.
we don't really have the time to pull that off.
But,
Or maybe some creative ways.
but the things that we have put in place, we'll call it a binder, have, these surveys we've done.
Right.
This other outreach, and where we've done, not starting today, but where we started
Yeah.
3 years
Right.
ago, 5 years ago, in the process of, started with the school closing, that's the beginning of the story, the schools.
That's right.
Starting to close and that process that we're taking to
That's right.
get to
Sure.
today and where we wanna be in the year, but that's all part of that binder in the story, the surveys.
Now,
Yeah.
we just made a decision on this, so not to do that.
Just remember, you're the one that's
And,
giving us that.
and these are recorded, but, Estacada is the darling of the county. They are the darling. Maybe just gets a little easier to get through the commission, but just keep that in the back of your mind.
Interesting. It wasn't very long ago that Boring was the darling of the county. How in the world did we move over to Estacada? Why didn't Sandy become the darling? What'd you do over there anyway?
Well, I would argue that
Carl,
we've been here a
what do you
year.
want to say?
Yeah.
I'm having fun here, but
Yeah, I know.
it just
Yeah.
seems like there's, why would they do that?
Yeah, anyways, okay.
Yeah.
And? what
Yeah,
else?
looking at the time and energy, so I think we have direction to bring back that boundary and that concept. We have a good enough sense of what is required.
Don't do anything based on our energy and time. If you have stuff and we need to make decisions on this, what do you need?
No.
No, I'm serious. We're not gonna look back and say that we didn't meet timelines because we didn't get direction from this council.
Yeah.
So if you need something tonight, we're gonna make those decisions
Yep.
tonight.
Some of the questions are more smaller questions that I think can get resolved. Like I said, we don't have to solve them tonight because I think the next major step is polling to see what is
Okay.
actually conceivable.
Okay.
Move forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead, finish.
Oh, because the other questions are sort of back to the questions of capital, and investments in like the building, the urban renewal that we have.
I I would also say, and I think we did say it, just to really put a fine point on it, that is, at the same time, really start engaging the county.
Yeah.
You know, and get from them, as Jordan said, like, having to rely on them, they get to, basically, they don't have to they don't do any of this. It's absolutely their call as to whether they do this or not. So, you know, start selling it, but also like, what do you need from us? What's it gonna take? What do we need to do to put you in a position where you feel comfortable doing it?
So to that point, I'm gonna, personally start reaching out to these commissioners, I'm gonna schedule meetings, and then once I have those meetings scheduled, I'm gonna send out the meeting date and time to council,
Okay.
and then you guys let me know who can attend. We have too many people to start sending around who works for what,
That's
right?
fine. Yeah.
But is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
I have some relationships and I suspect that several.
Oh, and you also make your own outreaches too.
Yeah.
I'm going to invite people to come along when I do it, that's all. But if y'all wanna make your own calls and your own meetings, I'm not stopping you, feel
Okay.
free.
A workshop.
But let's all make the message the same though, cause that's.
Absolutely.
Nothing worse than having mixed messages.
Exactly right, good point.
What
Yep.
about having a workshop with them that includes everybody? You know, where they have a 2-hour workshop?
If they're willing to do it, I say we invite them.
Mhm. I mean, they would invite us to their place.
Hey,
That's how they
can we
their-
do that though?
That's how they do their workshops.
But
Can we have a quorum at their workshop?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I have to look it up.
You have to,
We always have to meet within
You
our
have
own
to post it.
jurisdiction.
Sure.
They could come here, certainly.
But then they could they make a
They
decision?
haven't done that in 16 years.
I'd
They
be,
have the
I'd
same
be
problem
okay
with
with a
that?
couple of us
Or-
going and doing a
You can just
workshop.
meet anywhere in their
Forum.
boundary, you
Yeah.
generally have to meet in yours. Well, we can figure that out.
Okay.
That's true, we could just send 3 of us if you want.
Yeah, I think that's probably the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just do what?
Send 3 of us.
Yeah.
We figure it out.
Especially during theirs, there's no during work hours.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
The last topic is, you know, in preparation for Monday. I've expressed this already tonight, but the budgets that we developed are based on, you know, our current level of service, our current, you know, maintenance for parks, our, you know, recreation plus, you know, a little ad, a rec center budget that we kind of built off of, the office, you know, plan. That, to me, I mean, we did that in a few days. You know, Tanya has, obviously expertise in her team, and, you know, Tyler can crunch the numbers and everything, but, you know, I would suggest we use, you know, the Parks Board for input on that, and also engage with them about how do we leverage what we're doing with the Parks Master Plan, with
Yep.
the TAC members, the stakeholder interviews, to get input on that, and what, you know, this bigger district community might want in terms of programming in parks, and trying to get as much as we can that we have so already with our Parks Plan process to feed into that. Because this goes back to that whole question, and also, you know, trying to pull this all together in a couple of weeks before we poll is like making sure that we don't shortchange the district, because we did this master plan, but we didn't include the budget or the taxes to implement any of that master plan, and there's not gonna be pickleball because there's not enough money for it, you know. Just wanna make sure that we have a way to make sure those i's are dotted, those t's are crossed, outside of just, you know, us pulling that together, you know, in a week. I'm not sure what I'm suggesting there, just in terms of, you know, we have an opportunity coming up to start that engagement with the Parks Board, and then leveraging our master plan group.
I guess I would say, talk about public opinion at the very end here. Maybe I'd like to hear a response from the Parks Board chair at the moment, and see what that's gonna
Well,
be
yeah,
his response.
Yeah. You ready to do it?
I wanna see them, are we gonna be able to bring them into this conversation in that timeframe, so I'd like to hear from.
Well, yeah,
Well,
yeah, I
maybe
think
we
that's
can look
next.
at it.
Well,
That's
yeah, but I think
Monday.
that's next,
That's
we're
Monday.
opening up for public comment right now.
But, yeah, okay, I'm looking for a response from Catherine.
Yeah. All right, you done?
Yep.
Kathleen? Yeah, so opening up for public comment, if anybody would like to speak, I know Kathleen, if you have some comments and stuff, Carl would, well, all of us would love to hear them.
Everybody knows Makota, he's
Yeah,
on the
sure.
first workshop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, everybody. I guess my one main question is why the timeline, why the crunch timeline? Obviously, there's something, what's that for?
Yeah, a lot of us, you know, we feel really strongly with, what's going on with the pool, and a lot of the awareness that has popped up in the community. It allows us a really strong opportunity with the momentum behind that to strike. We've look back at, similar to what Jeremy's talked about, looking at the city of Estacada and kind of the efforts that have been in front of that community. Looking at past election results and kind of the political trends and tendencies. The Parks District is something that is a rather kind of a heavy lift in a community such as Sandy under the current dynamics that we are now. There's a worry that if we continue on and not address the pool right away, and the public sentiment to address the pool right away, along with our recreational activities, that in 2021 is an opportunity that we have to pass it than we have in 2020. 2022 is even less of an opportunity than we'll have in 2020. At one point, I think that helps solidify that is there was a survey done, scientific survey, that was done just previous to the purchase of the pool from the school district back in, when was that, 2013? And the polling came back showing 51% support for the pool and for the city purchase of that. So that's kind of like, wow, 51%, that's not great.
Yeah.
And you compare that to the survey that we just had done, where you're showing about 73% support for the aquatic center, and then it was 66 for this effort. I
Right
think
after the pool closed.
right after the pool
The pool
closed.
wasn't closed before.
And the pool wasn't closed before. I
Yeah.
think it speaks to what has happened, what has changed in the public sentiment during that time. And a lot of us attribute it to having something that was taken away and really understanding the need of that community.
You guys still feel the loss of it.
And feeling the loss of it. And so what we're feeling like what we'd like to do is we have this opportunity in front of us to strike.
Yeah.
And we don't wanna lose it.
There's also one other piece to that is that it's a presidential election. So you get people that vote. People don't typically vote in May elections, and not as many people vote in off presidential elections. So there's that on top of it that then allows for more people in the younger generation who are wanting this will vote on that.
So you're going after more community
More
inclusion.
Yes.
Engagement.
Because we believe that that is also, and from other things, why school bonds and other things want to be on that particular ballot to be able to pass it. Otherwise, you're waiting 4 years. And
Right.
we'll close for 4 more years.
Okay.
And the other thing is that in a presidential election, you get more younger voters, and the people that were responding to the survey were
Yeah.
people with families, and in big percentage numbers.
Yeah. And then I guess, what comes from that, I mean, Stan, you brought up a good point, it's, that there's pretty much three main things, taxation, representation, and dissemination of funds. How do you balance all those things? How do you make everybody happy, with all the, stakeholders?
Yeah.
And I mean, it gets messy fast. How is the city gonna be able to retain a, larger share of the control of this board? Like, how do the board members automatically come from city councils, and is it by population, or is it by percentage of finances that they, contribute, or what?
So, yeah, it can't be something that like every council, and David, of course, speak up if I'm wrong, but it can't be something that like every council sends a representative to on a
Yeah.
board, right? It's going to have to be represented as community members who want to run for a board spot.
Yeah.
Now, you could do open elections, where community members just at broad who live in the district can just run, and they run district-wide, and if they win, they're on the board. Or we can split it up into zoned districts, which is proportional to population and size and representing different regions, which I think a lot of us lean towards that based on the different population centers and, and economically the finances that our communities are contributing. We would like to try to match the representation on the board with those factors.
So would that mean inevitably Sandy would kind of probably have a majority of the?
That's right, because we're,
seats?
yeah, and I think we feel comfortable and strongly about that, considering the amount of property and things that we're donating to the district. think about the facilities and the parks and the pool specifically, and the community campus, those are
That we
huge.
may donate.
That we may, but those are huge, right, but those are huge assets,
So
right?
it would be fair to say that we retain like a floor three, like a floor seats on a 7-seat board, or
Right.
3 seats on a 5-seat.
I would
We
assume-
haven't gone that far, but if the question is it'd be fair to say that Sandy would control a majority vote of that board, I think that,
Pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure that would be it, that would be where we would land, yes. All right.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Hearing no other comments.
No, wasn't even.
Do it.
So, I'm gonna try to be positive. I'm gonna try not to cry, because this is important to me. It's important to a lot of people. Got a lot of ownership. Been on the Parks Board 4 years. So, time to move on maybe, but, you guys made the decision to close the pool at your goal-setting session a year ago. And I remember, Stan honestly, I appreciated his honesty when he says, he was very upset that I kind of got up there, when that guy got up at that thing and said, well, I heard you're closing the pool, which I already knew because my daughter worked at the pool, so that's how I got briefed on it, but, but that was a goal-setting session, and my comments were, you don't make decisions at goal-setting sessions, and you don't make decisions at workshops, as far as I know. And yet I keep hearing, okay, so we made a decision, good, we made a decision, and so I would just caution you a little bit, because when I hear a decision, I really feel like my experience with this city has been that the city council has always been very respectful about the fact that workshops are just to kind of gather ideas and all, but no decisions are made, and decisions get made in a proper public process with agendas and all that stuff. So just a little bit there. But I think that the things you're bringing up are just the surface dust of all the issues. It just feels like, when you kind of went with pool closer and then you went with the survey, that a lot of it, and I'll tell you how we felt as Parks Board and stuff, is just like it was just an echo chamber. And I have so much respect for Don, and I am so thrilled he's in my life. He is such an asset to this city. And I really knew little about parks districts or anything like that, and I'm learning a lot from him and from you all and all. And but when somebody who's done a district a couple times at least tells you that there's no way you can do this or do it well by November, I get sad and worried about how failure affects us. Is if he's telling, he's done it before. None of all of us have done it before. So when he's telling us that, I feel like, oh, maybe we should be listening to. Maybe that, I get that y'all want to rush it and all that, but I'm just worried about what does that mean for our success if we rush it. Especially when somebody who's done it before knows, what it takes. It takes time to bring people along. Y'all have ever heard the go slow to go fast? That was all the leadership training in the Forest Service. That was one of your little mantras they always told you. And no one, least of all the parks boards, want to have no say in something and then be told by, somebody else to go, here we go, we made our decision, now go, we're an advisory board. I would have thought that, you'd be getting advice from, I don't know what kind of, it doesn't sound like, it sounds like you guys have the decisions made, so I'm not sure what's happening on the 3rd, other than y'all tell us what the decision is and then maybe ask us to help implement it or something. And that doesn't feel real great. It feels like we're not, like our opinions don't matter. And I get you guys are really loaded for bear on this. I get your passion and your enthusiasm, and we all have that. The Parks Master Plan, I keep, Kathleen gets up and does another thing about the Parks Master Plan, and y'all have not been involved at all in it, have you? And see, I'm really pissed about that, because I just thought, I told Nancy and Jordan, I said, we need to get the city council just that far up, working, involved in the Parks Master Plan process. They met with stakeholders today. We need to, y'all are a key stakeholder. They should be meeting with you and all that, so that you can just understand the process that we're just kicking off. I'm so excited about the community engagement that that process represents. I'm so excited. I've been so waiting so long for it, because it's such a positive process to see all these people come together and give input on what they wanna see, and how do we get it, how do we pay for it. And so I'm thrilled about that. But instead, what we've got is this other thing going, and all of a sudden, you know, it's kind of confusing, this other process that was gonna play out, and y'all were gonna make a decision in October, and instead we've kind of got this other thing that's kind of, you know, we don't know what we want, or how much it will cost, or how, you know, but the district is gonna figure all that out. I hope that's not our, you know, how we sell this, because I kept hearing, well, the district will figure that out. Well, that doesn't bode well if, you know, we can't figure some of this stuff out beforehand, and the Parks Master Plan was the process to do that. And at the end of that process, the intent was that we would possibly form the Parks District, and you have all these stakeholders, you have all these focus groups, and what were you calling them, what did you call them, Jordan, the ones that, you know,
TPOs,
or no, the key holder, the
Stakeholders.
Well, yeah, but it was, you know, the foundational, you know, the grassroots involvement and stuff. Don said it takes 2 years to work all that stuff out, and we're proposing to disrupt the whole Parks and Trails master planning process, pushing this concept that, people really haven't been involved in other than you. And it's a whole new layer of government, and that should scare all of us, because it's like, oh my God, it's Metro, you know, it's like, oh God, I don't want Metro out here. I don't want a whole nother layer of government, because, it's the thing with extra layers of government is, you know, it's like all of a sudden you gotta have buildings, you gotta have vehicles and, you know, equipment and all this other stuff, and the biggest thing is you gotta have all this overhead people to push paper and, you know, do all the, you know, push people, push paper, whatever. And already we get those services from the city of Sandy, and we share the cost of those services with all the other departments, so there's that economy of scale. Well, now, all those costs are gonna be on the district. And my concern, because I'm a real frugal gal, is that, you know, when we're paying all these people, you know, in addition to the city of Sandy people all still getting paid, the support services and stuff, then what gets down to the ground? Less. You know, we gotta pay rent and buildings and all that other stuff. And so that is my concern, that y'all talk about these big numbers and stuff, but when you have to pay, you know, all the things you're talking about having to pay, I'm not sure, are we gonna be money ahead? Especially when you start carving out certain buildings. I couldn't quite understand that, because like the whole recreation program, Parks and Rec program, uses the community center for its programs, the classes and everything else. So if you're taking the building, where is that supposed to happen at? I don't get that at all. But, you know, that'll be something to figure out, I guess. Well, maybe we'll have to go buy a new building or rent one or something, I don't know. But, you know, like the rec programs are all movies in the park, basketball league and stuff. What was really upsetting to me at that closed setting session is you had the experts over here, your staff, who could have talked to you about that, and you never asked them. And I'm gonna tell you what, you know, I've kind of talked to some of them, and they feel like, you know, you were talking about their jobs. They didn't know if they're gonna have a job or not. Are they gonna have to go try to get another job with this Parks District? It's scary to those people. You're talking their employment. And so it's really important to involve people so that they don't feel disrespected. So anyways, it's just, the reality is that, you know, all of us are smarter than some of us, and the more we work together and support each other and listen to each other and not only listen, but ask each other. And I appreciate being asked, although at the very end, but I still appreciate being asked, thank you. But, you know, it's just, my experience with good leadership is that you really, you know, you guys set a vision, you get a lot of people involved to kind of help form that vision, and then you really empower your staff and your volunteers and your partners and your stakeholders, and you kind of get them all involved in kind of trying to figure out, you know, y'all were digging down in the weeds and kept going after that. And if you get get your partners and your staff and everything to kind of help dig all those potatoes and stuff and come up and say, well, here's what we could make with all this, and, you know, and and then we've got all these options with a lot of input, people get buy-in, and they feel, you know, you may not, you know, half the time you never pick my suggestion that I got testified about up at the city council, but, you know, I could say, well, they disagreed with me, but we're still being agreeable. I don't expect expect, I don't expect that, nobody expects that, but they feel like they're part of the process, and I appreciate, I think that's just the best way to move forward. I don't have a total decision, I haven't weighed in on whether I think this is a good idea or a bad idea. Like I said, I think we're rushing it. That failure scares me because it poisons the well. When people, trust me, I know the women's club up there, and you know what? It's almost too late. I tell you, everybody up on the mountain was probably talking shit about Sandy and how they're just, coming up here and doing all this stuff. And, it's like, because that's how they operate up there. And God knows I know them and love them all, but, so those kind of connections and communications, need to be made way early in the process. But like I said, it sounds like you guys kind of got it all worked out. And so people aren't gonna feel very open to that if you approach them with all the decisions already made. Anyway, I appreciate being listened to. I'm, it's my heart and soul. It's the reason I live here in Sandy, is to make a difference. When Nancy talked to me today, she said, they did all the stakeholder surveys, and she says, and you know what everybody said? Tickle Creek Trail. And I said, Nancy, that's our legacy.
That's right.
We got the Tickle Creek Trail that she and I can kind of look back, and if nothing else gets done, and if this whole district and everything else gets, falls apart, I feel like we've at least done that much. But I just feel like there's so much more out there to do. But the way we work together, needs to change. Because I'm not, and I'm not the only one. There were some other people I talked to today that you're gonna need, who feel like this, similar to me. So there's maybe a little bit of repairs and, and all, and just, or not. I mean, you guys can keep on doing what you're doing, but it's just feeling a little bit, kind of, a little raw, a little bit raw, like I said.
Well,
Okay, thanks.
Kathleen, just want to start with just thank you. Thank you. I mean that. And we do listen and take your opinion, whether you feel that way or not. I think back to when we were talking about the tourism dollars, and you brought up John's viewpoint and spending that money there, and we were all going one direction, and we all changed route on that. We very much appreciate your involvement in this community. Trickle Creek Trail, it's a gem. We take our dog, we're going walking on there as a family. So.
But you have so much more talent with this. I'm not looking.
No, and I'm not,
Yeah.
Kathleen, but to your point, I want you to understand that though, right? Is that we do appreciate your.
I feel appreciated.
I look forward to our meeting with the Parks Committee, next week, and to, our intent is, we wanted to be able to have at least an idea of where each other were at, so that then we could, together then have a conversation with the board. And so that's what we're attempting to do. Now, you saw me saying words like decision. We're not voting and stuff. What we're trying to do is provide homework for our staff and some general kind of things so that we can start getting some, facts together that we can collectively talk about and try to come forward with.
Jordan, are you turned off on there?
No.
Can you go back, just to kind of put it
Yeah.
in a real simple to see perspective of what I think we did tonight?
Mhm.
But if you can go to that page that has like the 20 different spots on it with all the different dollar amounts. Cause I think that's one where it's like, what I think we'd be doing a disservice if we showed up and asked people, and we're going out for polling, we're doing community feedback, but if we show up and say, which one of these 17 or 35 options do you want? Like, I think we're doing a disservice by not doing that. And I think to narrow it down, I think is a reasonable thing for us to try accomplishing. And I think also too, if you go back to your final slide, I mean, there's some stuff outlined on here, holding public meetings. We need to get more poll information, because we may go out with poll information that has some dollars attached to it. I mean, it's like when we did the little micro poll at Sandy Mountain Festival, it was like, hey, you can have everything, cotton candy, would you pay $5 for that? And everybody's like, yeah, I'll do that. But the reality is like when it's dollars and cents, and I mean, I've shared the impact on my household if we get the dollar. And it's like, I'm not excited about it. It's gonna be a lot of money even for my household, but I wanna know what the value is. And right now, I don't know which one our voters are behind even say like, okay, everybody's good with aquatics and here's how much it might cost. And so I think that next step's getting to that level of detail where we do have a clearer picture and we've got the stakeholder feedback. And I think that's what's gonna be happening over the next few weeks. And I think we're gonna need both of you and your support and advocacy, for things moving forward to be able to fund a lot of the things that you've been a part of that haven't been funded. I mean, we all felt that burden of closing the pool, and we felt it, and we continue to feel it, well beyond the closure of the pool. And I mean, I think even in that goal-setting session, reality was is we set direction for city staff, because in goal-setting, it was really clear we don't have the money to do everything. And so that turned into a later decision that, we made at a city council meeting, and, increasing or creating the public service fee, or public safety fee as well too. So, I mean, I think we're gonna need all the folks on board, and being able to support, and then just keep coming, keep being a part of it, keep asking people to speak up.
Yeah, appreciate that. All right.
I have one more question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Has it been shopped around at all to private companies to land lease it for like a 10-year land lease to make it? What?
You mean pool?
The pool, the property, yeah, the pool. Has it been shopped around at all to a private company to take that on?
No.
Um,
You look at the
Like a YMCA
you look at the
situation.
finances of that pool, it's
maybe
pretty
bigger
hard to
than the
believe.
YMCA situation, like, you know, actual water park, you know, company that would come in and maybe invest some dollars into it, you know, maybe do more, provide competition to other pool operators. No?
Well, yeah, no. Perhaps.
I think intuitively, we're thinking that that would be a really loser in terms, it's a loser for us in terms of how to make sure that thing goes. And in the process of trying to find a way, and I get Kathleen's concern about the speed at which we are going, but I think there are other elements that we really think that overwhelm the speed issue and concern that is there. But to me, for us to be able to put this on the shoulders of a YMCA for a operator of some kind, it's fairly obvious to me that that wouldn't be very economical. There's a lot of money lost there, so we haven't spent a lot of time, energy on it, but.
At what point does it become economical? Because there's water parks that, you know, of varying sizes that do
Sure.
operate in the black, so.
Right, but I mean, I think it's like all economic development, right? You have to identify those folks, you have to sell them on the community and the
Yeah.
market to be able to do that.
That's a whole other direction, obviously.
You're right.
Yeah.
Well, and frankly, we didn't have a huge percentage of our people using the pool when it was open.
Yeah.
So I have concerns about that being feasible at all, like keeping it running if, you know, not enough people are using it anyways.
And the polling didn't really
Yeah, I
show
didn't see
that
the
that's
polling.
what folks were interested in.
Right.
Because we did ask about private
Yeah.
development.
Oh, was that
Yeah.
a question on the
Yeah.
slide?
Yeah, there was an interest.
So how big they wanted to go, and they were like,
Make it more basic.
yeah,
Yeah.
more basic.
Okay.
Okay.
Just one last thought, there is a, TAC meeting tomorrow
Yes.
for the plan, and are you able to, okay. You good?
All right, close work session, thank you, everybody.
As a tag meeting for.
Sorry, technical advisory committee meeting for the parks